Good morning and welcome to today's New York City Council hearing on the Committee of Immigration along with Housing and Buildings. At this time, please silence all electronic devices. No one may approach the dais. Chair, you may begin.
I turn my mic on, yes. All right. Good morning and welcome to the April 20th joint oversight hearing of the Committee on Housing and Buildings and the Committee on Immigration. Today, we will be looking closely at tenant harassment against immigrant New Yorkers and the Certification of No Harassment program. We will also hear my bill, Intro 839, which would make the Certificate of No Harassment program permanent and expand its ability to prevent tenant harassment across New York City. I am Councilmember Pierina Sanchez, Chair of the Committee on Housing and Buildings, co-chairing today's hearing with Councilmember Elcia Encarnacion. First time, high five. Yeah. She is Chair of the Committee on Immigration. On behalf of the New York City Council, I'd like to welcome all members of the public and the administration who have joined us today in person and remotely. In New York City, it is unlawful for landlords to retaliate against anyone exercising their tenant rights. For instance, when a tenant is suffering from a rat infestation in their apartment and calls 311 to report it, their landlord cannot punish them for doing so. In fact, our city's housing maintenance code defines more than 20 practices that constitute harassment, from threatening to use force against a lawful occupant, to offering money in exchange for vacating one's unit, to repeatedly discontinuing essential services like water or electricity. The protections we have on the books are critical to protecting vulnerable New Yorkers, especially as we continue to face a housing crisis with such a low vacancy rate. Today, as the federal government carries out a program of mass deportation and intimidation, immigrant New Yorkers are particularly vulnerable to threats of retaliation. They face dangerous and unique forms of harassment. Here in New York City, we have unfortunately seen a pattern of this mistreatment. A landlord who threatened to call ICE on an undocumented tenant was fined $17,000 after CCHR, our city's Human Rights Commission, initiated a complaint. A Queens and Long Island-based management company agreed to pay $55,000 after state officials found that the company posted a sign in its lobby encouraging tenants to report immigrants to federal authorities. HPD recently created a PSA-style warning video warning New Yorkers of immigrant enforcement potentially posing as city housing inspectors. And tenants in Sunnyside, Queens reported being harassed, intimidated, and even threatened with deportation simply for requesting basic repairs. It is important to remember that for every documented case, there are many more that go unreported. The possibility of interacting with federal authorities, regardless of one's legal status, can upend an immigrant's family's life. The very risk of being detained or deported can deter an undocumented and non-citizen tenant from reporting this unlawful harassment. In a city of 3 million immigrants, where 60% of households are home to at least one immigrant and a significant percentage of undocumented persons, it is our sanctuary city's responsibility to respond. One of the city's tools for combating tenant harassment writ large is the Certificate of No Harassment program, or CONH, administered by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. The CONH program has a simple premise. New Yorkers deserve to live free of harassment, and buildings where harassment is most likely should face greater scrutiny from the city. Building on earlier programs from the 1970s, as we like to do in the Housing Committee, the council created the CONH program through the CONH pilot program through Local Law 1 of 2018, and then extended that pilot in 2021. The program works like this. First, HPD identifies buildings where tenants are most likely to face harassment based on building distress indicators, changes in ownership, and findings of harassment in housing court. Second, these buildings are then added to the Certificate of No Harassment list. And third, when an owner of a building on the CONH list wants to begin certain construction work, such as a full or partial demolition, change of use, or a significant alteration, they must apply for a Certificate of No Harassment before receiving DOB approval to proceed with that work. Once a building owner applies, HPD initiates a thorough investigation to determine if tenants are being harassed. If HPD makes a determination that harassment has occurred, the owner is denied the certificate and is unable to obtain their permits from the Department of Buildings. Owners can wait 5 years to reapply, or they can enter into a cure agreement, which we'll talk more about during the Q&A. In March of 2026, HPD's report covering the last 4 years of CONH, HPD made several encouraging findings. Buildings in the second pilot had fewer HMC violations, housing maintenance code violations, than CONH, non-CONH buildings, and more than 15% of buildings that requested a CONH had their certificate denied, indicating some success that we are in fact identifying the right buildings where harassment is occurring. But in other respects, the program's success was limited. Of the more than 1,500 buildings on the CONH list, HPD received only 30 applications for a certificate of no harassment over a 4-year period, just 2% of all covered buildings. In the council district with the highest share of covered buildings, District 16, my neighbor to the south, represented by Althea Stevens, not one of those 80 buildings applied for a CONH over the 4-year pilot. These data points raise questions about potential unintended consequences of the program, and we should talk about how to strengthen this selection methodology. With the program set to expire in September of this year, now is a pivotal moment to assess the impact of CONH and incorporate changes that will better deliver on its promise to protect tenants. That's why Intro 839 would make the certification of no harassment program permanent using a rolling 5-year look back and expand eligibility to scrutinize an owner's entire portfolio if the state or a relevant court has made a finding of harassment in one of their buildings. I look forward to strengthening this legislation after hearing from the many stakeholders set to testify today. During today's hearing, we're eager to hear from the administration on its strategies for combating tenant harassment, feedback on the proposed legislation, and testimony from members of the public who have taken time out of their days to join us. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the former City Council member, Brad Lander, and members of the Coalition Against Tenant Harassment, which were integral to establishing the 2018 and 2021 CONH programs. That coalition was led by ANHD. I'd like to also thank the Housing and Buildings Committee staff, Senior Legislative Counsel Austin Malone, Legislative Counsel Billy X, Senior Policy Analyst Jose Conde, Policy Analyst Dirk Spencer, Finance Analyst Carla Naranjo, and Data Analyst Reese Hirota. I was about to make her Latina too. Noah Slasberg, and Mohammed Shadid, as we do. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my staff, Chief of Staff Maria Villalobos, Deputy Chiefs Ben Ratner and Kim Castellanos, Gerard Fernandez, Dylan Campos, Maria Jose Mares, Soraya Bonilla, and Oriana Roa Acevedo. I'd like to also acknowledge the members who are present. Councilmember Maloney, Aviles, and Joseph. And yes, okay. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my co-chair, Councilmember Chair Encarnacion, to deliver her remarks.
Thank you, Chair Sanchez, and good morning, everybody. I am Councilmember Elsie Encarnacion, Deputy Whip of the New York City Council and Chair of the Committee on Immigration. Thank you all for being here today. As mentioned, we are examining tenant harassment against immigrants and the Certificate of No Harassment program. I really want to thank the Chair, Chair Sanchez, for co-chairing this hearing and for her leadership on these issues. I also want to thank my colleagues, the administration, and members of the public for joining us today. This hearing will focus on the harassment immigrant tenants face and how city responds through its programs, its services, its outreach. For many immigrant New Yorkers, housing challenges are a daily reality. Of the 3 million immigrants in our city, nearly 1 in 10 lives in overcrowded housing, and nearly 1 in 4 is rent burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on rent. 16% of low-income first-generation immigrants live in substandard conditions due to landlord neglect. Undocumented New Yorkers are especially vulnerable. They are excluded from federal housing assistance and unemployment insurance, and many housing programs restrict access based on immigration status. This leaves them more exposed to landlord harassment. Advocates have also raised concern about how federal immigration policies are shaping tenant-landlord dynamics. During the first Trump administration, for example, this building in Queens that was discussed displayed the Homeland Security Investigations tip line sign encouraging reports to federal authorities, and staff allegedly used the threat of immigration enforcement to intimidate tenants. Today, similar fears persist. I have spoken with constituents in my own district who endure unsafe living conditions but hesitate to report them out of fear of being reported to ICE. No one should feel unsafe in their own home, especially in a sanctuary city. Recent federal proposals risk making the situation even worse. A proposed rule from the Department of Housing and Urban Development would deny housing assistance to mixed status families, reducing access to programs like Section 8 and public housing. If enacted, it would increase housing instability, overcrowding in our shelters, and homelessness, while needlessly separating families. I was proud to join Speaker Menon in opposing this rule and urging its withdrawal. We should be expanding access to safe, affordable housing, not restricting it. In that context, today's hearing will examine how the city supports immigrant tenants facing harassment and discrimination. At a time of hostile federal policy, it is critical that we continue advancing local solutions and pushing for broader protections so that all families can access safe and affordable housing. I also want to thank the service providers who work tirelessly to support our immigrant communities and our committee staff who made this hearing possible. Senior Legislative Counsel Nicole Kata, Senior Legislative Policy Analyst Rebecca Barria, Principal Financial Analyst Navi Baines, and Assistant Finance Director Florentine Cabor. Finally, I want to thank my team, my Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephanie Herrera, and our Legislative Director, Adam Newman Bernstein, and everybody working behind the scenes to make today run, including our Sergeant at Arms. Thank you so much. I now turn it back to Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you so much, Chair Encarnacion. And with that, I will turn it over to our council to administer the oath.
Thank you. If you're here to testify on behalf of the administration, please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council questions? Thank you. You may begin when you're ready.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Sanchez, Chair Encarnacion, and members of the Committee on Housing and Buildings, and members of the Committees on Immigration. I am Anne Marie Santiago, Deputy Commissioner for the Office of Enforcement and Neighborhood Services at the New York City Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development. I am joined by my colleagues, Marty Weithman, Assistant Commissioner of Housing Litigation, and Tanaya Srini, Assistant Commissioner of Housing Policy. We are also joined, in the second row here, by Lorena Lucero, Deputy Commissioner of Programs and Policy, and Derek Gomez, Associate Director of Programs from the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, in addition to Salvatore Agostino, Assistant Commissioner for Strategic Enforcement from the Department of Buildings. 4 questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today regarding Intro 839 of 2026 on the Certificate of No Harassment Pilot Program and immigrant-related tenant harassment. All New Yorkers have the right to be safe in their homes and free from harassment. Harassing or discriminating against New Yorkers based on their immigration status is illegal, and the city will not tolerate it. Working with our sister agencies, HPD will do everything we can to identify and root out harassment and discrimination of any kind. When the city received allegations that landlords were threatening to call ICE on tenant-making housing complaints, HPD, the New York City Commission on Human Rights, the Mayor's Office for Immigrant Affairs, and the Public Engagement Unit began coordinating to educate immigrants about their housing rights as New Yorkers. We created 11 educational materials in 11 languages, a social media toolkit, and convened a roundtable for reporters. The material made clear that landlords cannot harass or threaten tenants, regardless of their immigration status. 20 media outlets covered this public awareness campaign, helping get our message out broadly. Recommitting to this important work on February 6th, Mayor Mamdani issued Executive Order 13, clearly stating the city's commitment to protect all New Yorkers, regardless of immigration status. It established a formal process for interagency collaboration and response to safeguard immigrant rights. Work through a multi-agency task force is now underway. HPD recently launched a targeted social media campaign to help tenants recognize city staff and identify individuals falsely and illegally posing as inspectors. This administration will seek out every opportunity to identify and respond to bad actors. We look forward to continuing to collaborate with the council on this critical work to safeguard the rights of immigrant New Yorkers. Now we'd like to turn to the CONH program. This administration is focused on identifying and eliminating harassment. CONH, the Certificate of No Harassment, is one of the city's most important anti-harassment deterrents. It is a targeted tool to protect tenants from landlords who might try to harass them out of the building in order to make major building renovations or redevelop the building. The CONH pilot program, called the pilot or the pilot program, first enacted in 2018 and expanded in 2022, was born out of a 2016 council-led multi-stakeholder working group. The working group conducted a thorough research process to identify the building characteristics most associated with harassment. Under the pilot program, the city would investigate buildings exhibiting these characteristics before granting permits for work that would allow owners to benefit financially from such harassment. This precise targeting can create a powerful disincentive for harassment. The CONH pilot launched in 2018 as a result of this rigorous and collaborative work. It included buildings with these research-backed risk factors: physical distress, enforcement activity, and ownership instability. Buildings with the following characteristics were therefore put on the CONH list: if they were active in the alternative enforcement program and received an order to correct, if they received a full vacate order issued by HPD or the Department of Buildings, harassment findings, and if they were identified through HPD's Building Qualification Index, referred to as the BQI, which captures buildings with high level of physical distress measured through agency violations and frequent ownership changes. Once those buildings apply for permits, HPD conducts a thorough and tenant-focused investigatory process before determining whether harassment has occurred. As the Council considers the future of the CONH pilot program, it is important to ground this discussion in the original design and the lessons we have learned. After the original 2018 pilot, HPD identified important operational conflicts between CONH and the other enforcement programs. CONH sometimes delayed urgent repair work that certain buildings in AEP 7A and those with vacate orders needed to do because of the CONH process. These delays ran counter to the program's core goal of protecting tenants. And at the expiration of the pilot in 2022, working with the Council, we changed the criteria to fix that problem. Based on HPD's analysis of program implementation since 2022, we believe that the CONH program is identifying the right pool of buildings, protecting tenants at risk without adding unnecessary delays for critical repairs, and should be made permanent. The report provides a detailed accounting of our findings. We found that while only a small number of buildings applied for a CONH, over 15% of applications were denied because HPD found harassment. This is a significantly higher rate than the CONH requirement for single-room occupancy buildings or buildings in the special districts, and suggests to us that the program is well targeted. As the Council considers next steps, HPD recommends transitioning to a permanent program with the following refinements: regularly updating eligibility criteria, including recalculating the BQI, to ensure the program continues to target buildings currently at risk without creating loopholes. Consider the cure mechanism and ensure it is a viable path for property owners who want to proceed with renovations while remaining a deterrent to harassment. And maintain a clear and evidence-based approach to eligibility, ensuring that any additional criteria, such as illegal eviction, meet high standards of data accuracy and enforceability. As you know, the CONH program is one of many tools that we use to protect tenants from harassment. The Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants, HPD's Anti-Harassment Unit, the Department of Buildings Office of the Tenant Advocate, the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, and the City's Commission on Human Rights work to address tenant harassment independent of any actions by an owner to renovate their building. In particular, the administration recognizes that tenant organizing is one of the most effective ways to prevent tenant harassment. We support tenants in forming tenant associations, which is one more way we can ensure negligent landlords will be identified and held accountable. Through our Partners in Preservation program, we support a network of 21 tenant organizing groups to knock on doors, hold workshops, and organize new tenant associations. The administration views the CONH program as a targeted and very effective preservation tool. The data presented in our report indicates that the program is accurately identifying problematic buildings, incentivizing owners to maintain their property and reduce violations, and protecting tenants from displacement. For these reasons, HPD supports making the program permanent. We look forward to working with the council around the newly proposed components of the CONH program outlined in the bill and to continue our work together to disincentivize and stop harassment in all forms. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We are happy to answer any questions.
I'm going to apologize on behalf of our body for our inconvenient seating arrangements, but maybe we could do a little bit of musical chairs so that Moya can come up and give their testimony, and then we'll start up with questions. Is that okay?
Moya is here for questions, so their testimony, their top lines were included in my testimony.
Understood. Okay, so
But if we're going to start with their questions about the immigration harassment, we will switch chairs.
okay, so that was all of the
That is all the
administration's
testimony.
testimony. Okay,
Correct.
okay, never mind then. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. So we will start with HPD, and then we'll move to Moya. I'd like to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Zhuang. Okay, thank you. So first, I did so in my opening remarks, but want to thank HPD for your swift action on coordinating to educate New Yorkers about their rights when there were these claims of imposters, folks, agents, ICE agents, and pretending to be housing inspectors. Very happy to see the city move quickly to protect New Yorkers in that way. Okay, so first question I'm going to ask is regarding HPD's coordination with the Commission on Human Rights. When there is a complaint alleging harassment and discrimination based on national origin or citizenship status, I speak English, does the city have a formal protocol, the two agencies have a formal protocol on how to collaborate on such claims?
Thank you, Councilmember. I think the agencies have been communicating on these issues for a long time, especially through our more tenant-focused programs like Partners in Preservation. There's very close relationship, constant working between the agencies. I think under EO 13, we're looking to put more formal, referral mechanisms in place for amongst multiple agencies, not just between those two. So we are engaged in that work through the mayor's office, and we look forward to those changes.
Got it, thank you. And today, what is the HPD's protocol if an HPD inspector arrives and encounters ICE out of the building?
I believe that has not happened at this time, Councilmember. Whenever a housing inspector encounters an unusual situation at a building, their protocol is to contact their supervisor immediately and report that. And we will deal with it at a higher level in terms of what the next steps might be.
Got it. Thank you. The CONH report that HPD provided to the council in March suggested that buildings placed on the list due to a vacate order have an unusually high approval rate. Can you tell us why you think that is? And specifying this is for the pilot expansion that did not include buildings that had a vacate because of a fire. So why do you think that is, and how should the program be changed to address this particular finding?
Thank you, Councilmember. I don't think that we have any empirical evidence suggesting why that might be, but clearly buildings that have vacate orders have a higher need for the types of covered work that would be required, that would require a certificate of no harassment. And so I would presume that would be the answer, but I don't believe that we have any empirical data to support that.
Got it. That does make sense. And I'm very happy to be working with the agency on this and happy that there is alignment to make the program permanent. Regarding your recommendations for the transition to a permanent program, you recommend in your report and today regularly updating the eligibility criteria. So just so I understand, regularly updating the eligibility criteria, would that be to include new properties every year or to remove existing properties that no longer get captured with the 5-year look back, or how exactly would you use that new information?
Yeah, thank you, council member. I think a 5-year period, a 4-year period, which is what it has been under the pilot, is a long period of time. We are still doing our internal assessment of what might be the right period to refresh the list. I think too frequent a refresh could be problematic, as too long a refresh could be. So we are happy to circle back with the council once we have some suggestions on that time period.
Thank you. But what would you do with the refreshed information?
Meaning, would we? Well, we would
Are you
do the
running
same.
the list again to identify buildings to put in
I
at
think
that
I think
cadence?
it would be what we have done at the 5-year periods or at the end of the programs at this point, right?
Okay.
Which is add buildings and remove buildings. Basically, run the list fresh.
Got it. Thank you. That makes sense. Just wanted to make sure I understood. And then considering, I think this is, I've had this question, this burning question that is connected to your recommendation that the cure mechanism to ensure that the design of the cure program works to, disincentivize harassment. How do I frame this question? This is an important program, and I think we're seeing very positive results. The fact that, as you say, buildings that are identified in the pilot are then coming back, their determinations of harassment being found. But does the agency think, HPD or DOB, that any work that is necessary is not able to happen because CONH buildings are maybe not opting to do the work?
You mean, do we think that the CONH program serves as a deterrent for people to do necessary work? The way that the CONH program is designed is that repairs that are needed go forward, right? And that the target really for the types of work that are covered work are really not basic repairs and necessary work that needs to happen. And so I think, we are confident, and at times we do proactively have to tell people, or DOB does when people apply, you can proceed with this work without a certificate of no harassment. And that's very important to us. That's why we made the changes between the 2018 and 2022 versions of the pilot.
Great. Thank you so much. That's almost like a devil's advocate question, because I can imagine that's an argument made against the expansion or the making permanent of CONH. So I appreciate that response. So how do the agencies understand the numbers that we're seeing? 30 certificate of no harassment applications for a universe of 1,500 buildings does seem low. Is that low, and how do the agencies understand that number?
Thank you. I will give Assistant Commissioner Srini a chance to. She does our data and our policy work, so more familiar with all of the numbers than I. But I think, and at some part it reflects overall city investment in buildings, and especially in the neighborhoods where there are concentrations of CONH buildings. So if you have anything to add.
Yeah, thank you. I think, the important thing to note here as well is that it's a program of deterrence, and so only when a owner is opting to do covered work, that special category of work, primarily changing occupancy, is the CONH application coming into play. And so it's hard to kind of predict via data how frequent that would be, what would drive that interest, or how it would be distributed across the city. Though we're happy to share data on that distribution of applications.
Is there a difference in the rate of this kind of covered work that was done by the 1,500 buildings versus the entire eligible pool or the city at large?
I don't have the data on the eligible buildings that are applying for a CONH. I only have the data here for the buildings that were flagged for the pilot.
Okay, they just told me the same thing too, so we all have to be louder. Okay, it would just be helpful to have, you know, a comparable statistic of 30 out of 1,500 compared to how many in the city for these kinds of work.
Yeah, we can follow up.
Okay. And then one more question, and then I'll turn it over to our deputy whip. What is the average amount of time from CONH application submission to final determination? Is there anything that can be we should consider in terms of making that timeline a little shorter? I understand it's 7 months, but can it be made shorter? And what are sort of the drivers of delays?
Thank you, Council Member. So you'll see also in the report, we had varying levels of staffing during the pilot period, so that did, of course, affect where we were. We are at a relatively good place now with the staff. We do have a few vacancies that we are working to fill. But I think the process is in part defined by the requirements, right? So there is a requirement to put out a public notice, give a comment period, do the investigation, talk to the tenants, and engage in that investigation. You know, we are always looking to improve administrative timelines, but there is certainly a built-in period where you really want to take a look closely, talk to all the people you can, and you don't want to rush that process to come to an appropriate finding.
Got it. Thank you. Was there a difference in how long the process took with the first pilot versus the extension?
I don't know the answer.
That's a really good question. I don't have that data right now. I know that COVID obviously played a role in delays during the first pilot, but we can certainly follow up and provide that information.
Great, thank you. Just acknowledging we've been joined by Council Members Krishnan, Majority Leader Abreu, and Council Member Gutierrez on Zoom. Chair?
Hello. And thank you for your testimony. I know that you were covering CONH, but also other pieces of harassment. And you spoke about the mayor's office to protect tenants, HPD's anti-harassment unit, the Department of Buildings, the Office of Tenant Advocate, the mayor's office of Immigrant Affairs, the City Commission on Human Rights. And that's a lot of folks. But there's a lot of people still falling through the cracks. And the larger kind of universe of people that are not, that their buildings are not looking to make repairs. They just living in really deplorable conditions is really what concerns me and what's kind of pushing some of my questions. And you also mentioned that there were the Partners in Preservation program, which actually has people go out, knock on doors, organizations that do that. Is there a formal process where those folks come back and report and that triggers inspections or fines or something for accountability, an accountability measure for the landlords?
Sure. Let me just change the dais folks, and then I'll answer your question, because probably a lot of your questions too are going to need to be partially answered by the mayor's office. So if you could just give us 1 second. So thank you for your question. Yeah. I'll speak particularly to the Partners in Preservation Program and to the HPD programs, and then I'm sure there are other details that maybe Moya can fill in. So the Partners in Preservation Program has HPD staff working with these 21 based community groups. We jointly identify what buildings to go out to or what neighborhoods. Based on the findings of those community groups, and in fact, I think it was from one of those community groups where we heard about the allegation of the ICE agent making, claims to be an HPD inspector. That information comes back to us, and then our Partners in Preservation Program is in close contact with Moya and CCHR on the harassment side of things. On the maintenance condition side of things, Partners in Preservation does work closely with my area, which is code enforcement. Whether that means we need to conduct inspections, whether that means we expedite 311 complaints, whether that eventually leads to some other enforcement action, and HPD has a number of enforcement programs that a building could fall into. We encourage them through their community organizing to seek housing court action and to take other joint actions in dealing with the landlord. So there are a lot of potential outcomes on the conditions of the building itself. But most of any follow-up that has to do with the discrimination is not an HPD enforcement opportunity. And so for that, that's where I would turn it over to my sister agencies.
I'm sorry, before you join, could you please raise your right hand? Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and to respond honestly to council member questions? You may proceed.
I'll add here that Moya is often the first trusted point of contact for immigrants in particular, and immigrant communities engaging city government. And what we do is connect people with the appropriate agencies. There's a couple of different touch points and how we do that. If you want me to expand, I'm happy to in regards to.
I'm just trying to get an idea of, there's a building, has no heat, no hot water, but plumbing is a mess. Things are happening, ceilings falling. They are not reporting because of the fear of ICE and retaliation. And so now this building has been identified by one of the partners or someone made a call. The process by which these things get addressed is where I'm trying to get to. Like, does it go through Moya? Does it go through you guys? Where are the fines? Who's making them do these repairs? Like, how does this actually translate to tangible things that change for the residents?
Sorry. So the conditions would definitely go through HPD, right? So the Partners in Preservation would refer them to us, depending on, again, whether people are or are not filing complaints. We can dispatch both our Division of Neighborhood Preservation and our Division of Housing Code Enforcement, and violations will be written as per our usual process. So it does require a level of coordination with the tenants, right? Because we do need to get into the building and see conditions, and at that point, sometimes the tenants prefer not to have that done. And maybe they deal with the tenant organizing, they prefer to work with the tenant organizers to try and advocate for change. If they allow us to come in, we will go in and do the work that we would normally do, which is for heat and hot water, for example. We would write a violation. If the violation warrants it, we would send our own emergency repair program. We have a program that will go in and attempt to repair boilers and restore hot water if the owner fails to do so. So those processes would continue to happen however we got involved with the building.
Okay. And then you also mentioned that there were materials that were translated into 11 languages. But how many languages can tenants currently file an HPD harassment complaint?
So complaints in general go through 311, and 311 has access to language line for any of 100 plus languages, right? Complaints about harassment might come to our anti-harassment unit. We also, as an agency, and I would hazard a guess that most agencies do, have language line as an option, right? So whoever calls in whatever language, the option is to get language line on the phone. When we're dealing through our Partners in Preservation, often they have staff who speak those languages and can do kind of that translation for us. So I think there's a number of options. These are the types of materials. I think this one's in English, obviously, but that was designed with the joint agencies and delivered through our Partners in Preservation organizers, our community-based organization partners, or through our staff to tenants so that they know how to navigate the system in terms of the harassment specifically. Because sometimes the harassment isn't related directly to the conditions. The landlord may just want the tenant to leave,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they want them to raise the rent to a ridiculous amount as well. Like there's a ton
Right.
of that. Okay, and then so what can you walk me through so that process and when they call, what kind of information is required from the tenant to give you? What kind of personal information n- do you require from
When
them?
filing a complaint with HPD,
Yes.
we require, in most cases, if the condition is in your apartment, we need your name and we need your apartment number and your building address. That is all.
Okay.
And whatever condition you're complaining about. For conditions like heat and hot water, you can report that anonymously. So we would encourage folks, and this is the very reason, even going back many, many years, why we allow anonymous complaints to be made. Not just immigration harassment, but harassment of any kind.
And so going back to CONH, does HPD currently have the capacity to proactively investigate buildings on the pilot list that show indicators of repeated complaints or vacancies?
So HPD has other programs that work proactively. The CONH program is an after-the-fact program when an owner applies for Department of Buildings permits. HPD also has an anti-harassment unit that does things proactively. So we run a slightly different list of buildings, but it is also a list that has buildings with many of the same characteristics: high violations of hours, complaints to DOB, potentially other agencies, and we proactively send inspectors to those buildings. We don't wait for a complaint to come in.
So do they ever overlap in that way? Like, does it ever
A
get
lot of our
funneled in?
programs overlap.
Yeah.
So you can select just because a building is on the CONH pilot list does not mean that it will not be identified through the anti-harassment unit and proactive inspections conducted.
Okay, last one. Do you know how many of the buildings on the pilot list receive any form of city subsidy, tax exemption, public financing?
Thank you very much for that question. I don't believe we usually track that. We did get that question, so we are looking into that data, and we're happy to share that once we put that together.
Yeah, I have other, I wasn't, we're still trying to figure out how we were doing all of the questioning. So I was focusing most of my question. I have questions for you. Don't worry.
Okay.
But I'm also going to try to open it up to some of the other council members here so they can ask their questions, but I'll leave that to chair to manage.
Thank you, Chair. So now we'll turn to council member colleague questions. First up is Councilmember Zhuang.
Thank you, Chair. And also, I want to thank everyone come here for testify. I have a question. When we talk about tenants and the landlord call them all ICE, I have a situation in my district, a developer harassing people in the neighborhood saying, if you keep protesting here, we're going to call police, you're going to get arrested, we'll call ICE on you, you're going to get deported. This type of situation, which department I can go to make a complaint? Is HPD, Moya, or it's a developer?
Yeah, I would say that all, just to start, all New Yorkers, regardless of immigration status or national origin, have the same housing rights. In that case, we would encourage folks to call the New York City Commission on Human Rights, developer or not, to file a complaint. But I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, if you
It's
believe
a
that
developer.
this-
It's not a renter and a landlord.
if you believe that the developer is one that works with HPD, you can certainly reach out to us. I'm not familiar with the developers in my day-to-day work, but we're happy to take your complaint and look into it for whatever we can identify.
Thank you. And also, from the program, are tenants aware of this program? And what's the language when you guys doing outreach? How many languages you have?
Thank you. You're talking specifically about the Certificate of No Harassment program?
Yes.
Or you're talking about
The no harassment program.
So when a building applies for the program, we do notice the building and we do send investigators out. We will make sure that the information that we give out is in, and I believe the bill lists out that the should be the 10 languages, right? Which we put most of our materials in. So we will make sure that that is encompassed there, and we appreciate that change.
Because most of people get harassed are immigrants, and a lot of them don't speak English at all. So if the team doing reaching out only in English, it's very hard for people to know. In my district, a lot of people have no idea about this program.
Thank you, Councilmember. We're definitely going to work to make sure that as much as we can in the 10 languages, that everything is understandable and that they have someone to reach to. Again, if someone should see our notice and call the Certificate of No Harassment Program, they have access to Language Line to be able to talk back and forth and translate that information.
Appreciate it, thank you. And also, I had the situation in my district because ICE came to the neighborhood. A lot of people live in that neighborhood just ran away. The people don't have documents. Any way HPD can help those people?
I would turn that question to Moya. I know they do a lot of outreach in neighborhoods, just in general, on immigrant rights. So let me.
Yeah, we're happy to follow up on that. And even thinking about your first question, 'cause I think your first question, I might have answered it wrong. We can follow up too with the development question, because I think that's a little bit different, and I know that was mentioned than a landlord. And then in regards to outreach, I don't know how often we have been in your neighborhood, but I can get back to you and happy to.
We have a situation, ICE came in, take one person away. I actually know the people live in the building, they just moved. They're scared to live there anymore.
Okay, got it.
Like every single one don't have document in that area, everyone moved.
Because they're afraid that they
Yes.
can come back.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Zhuang. Councilmember Joseph, followed by Councilmember Maloney, then Aviles.
Thank you. Good morning. Couple of questions. Said a couple of great things, right? So to file the harassment complaint, the certification of no harassment, how long does it take? And what are the criterias for the buildings to get on? And if they do want to apply, language access and language barriers usually the main things that our communities of immigrants face. Can you walk us through the process?
Certainly. Thank you. So the Certificate of No Harassment Program, as we're explaining, is a program of deterrence, right? The idea is that identifying buildings that have certain characteristics, and just in general, those characteristics include violations, emergency repair charges. The building is in the alternative enforcement program, right, or the 7A program. There's been a vacate order, although not a fire vacate, right? I may have missed one, and a harassment finding, right? So if there's been a finding of harassment against the property already in a court, those buildings are included. I am not the data person, so if you really want to drill down, I can bring Assistant Commissioner back up. But the idea is that those characteristics are weighed against other similar buildings at the time that the list is run, right? The buildings get on the list, the owners are notified that they are on the list, and that if they wish to do certain work, which is referred to as covered categories of work, when they apply for those, when they put those applications in, apply for those permits from the Department of Buildings, they must get the sign off from the HPD that after an investigation, we found no evidence of harassment in the 5 years prior to their application.
So I have a building in my district, 75 Lennox Road, who's been on the news. The management made sure that folks were walking around with security hats to intimidate the tenants, knocking on their doors. Then within 2 days, ICE showed up at the building. So this was a form of harassment, but I'm sure the tenants in those buildings don't know about this program that you talk about, because that building has several violations, many violations, and we did a walkthrough. We met with the tenant association, and then we met with another building that said the minute they call 311, management is already at their door saying, why are you calling 311?
And I don't know if this building is on the list or not, council member. But we'd be happy to talk with you further about this.
I would
And if
love
the
that.
building is on the list, talk to you about what next steps maybe we can
Yeah, would love to do that along with their tenant association. When HPD go on site and they find, let's say, an ICE agent, what is the protocol?
Again, as I mentioned to the chair, we have not yet had that, to my knowledge, to have that happen. But in any case where an inspector goes on site, or a field staff person really, because we do have other field staff that go to buildings as well, the protocol is to escalate that within the agency. So certainly I would know if that has happened. We would take appropriate steps depending on the facts of what is actually happening in the building at that case. So I think, our inspectors are fairly good at identifying unusual situations, such as I would imagine that would be.
At 75 Lennox Road.
I'm talking about if they
Were to
came across
encounter
and yes.
ICE. And Moya, what are in place for you to work with HPD, DOB if these situation occurs? What resources are out there, or community engagement for communities to know that these programs exist? Sometimes we do great work, but no one knows it exists.
Yeah, thank you for that. We've developed, well, there's several just guidance that we have that we put out that include our Moya One pager, and that includes also information for New Yorkers. It's available in over 50 languages on tenant rights. We've collaborated with CCHR to put together immigrants in New York City human rights at work and at housing. HPD also mentioned this other flyer that we put together with Immigrant Knowing Your Rights in Housing. PEU, we also supported them in putting together a KYR that they have available at their portal of information and rights that they have regardless of status, and as well as the Tenant Bill of Rights.
Are these information also located inside a housing court?
I don't have the answer.
I think that would be a great place to start as well.
I would also say, and her listing all those documents reminded me, when our inspectors do any inspection, we give out a pamphlet about a host of housing issues.
Right.
And one of them on there is harassment. It's not currently specific to immigration harassment, but it gives them a referral to CCHR, and it provides some information on contacts on who they can go to if they feel they're being harassed. The definition of what harassment is. That pamphlet is available in 10 languages. We have a QR code on the back for people to scan, and it says in the 10 languages, if you want a copy of this in Spanish, scan the QR code, and it takes them to our website where they can find that document in their language.
In the moment that we are in right now, I hope there's a lot of collaboration interagency to make this work seamless, as our tenants in New York City face a high rate of harassment, and folks are banking on this idea of ICE being in buildings to make sure they're scaring tenants. Thank you so much. Thank you, chairs.
Yeah, thank you very much, Council Member. And under EO 13, as I mentioned, the agencies are in a very coordinated way working towards making this information very educational and directed to the folks who need it.
Great. Thank you so much, Council Member. And the question that you raise about the property in your district, I think that's a big part of the reason why we do want a faster refresh of the data, so that we can be capturing buildings in more than a 5-year cadence. So it's really great feedback. Thank you. Council Member Aviles.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I wanted to, the issue that many immigrant communities face is an issue of overcrowding in units and all the safety that safety issues that emerge from those kinds of conditions. Is HPD getting any incoming around like severe overcrowding, and how are you addressing that issue?
Thank you, Council Member. So our inspectors have dealt with overcrowding over the years. I don't think it's a new issue for us.
Right.
To the extent that we can allow people to remain in place, we do. I can't think of a recent incident where we found such significant overcrowding that a vacate was necessary on a large scale. We have in the past found those things. I think our goal is to make sure that people are safe, right, to the extent possible. As you know, or as some of you may know, when we issue a vacate order, people do have our emergency housing process available to them, and that is also regardless of immigration status.
And in terms of, thank you. I mean, I think obviously it is an issue that has persisted over decades, and obviously with the cost of rent in this city, it is no surprise that both in immigrant communities and non-immigrant communities, you'd have overcrowding in units just to try to pay for them. However, there have been a number of issues related to overcrowding that we've got to figure out how to address, particularly in immigrant communities who have language isolation and maybe do not understand or have not had access to the kinds of programs and information that the city has at its disposal. In terms of the certificate of no harassment process, what's the average time from application to determination?
For the pilot period, it was 7 months.
And is what seems like a long time, a lot happens in 7 months. What kinds of elements determine that time frame, and has HPD looked at ways to reduce that time frame?
Yeah, thank you very much, council member. So there are set periods in the law for us to do outreach. There's a 45-day response period that we can extend to 60 days. Our teams need to go out and speak to the residents, right? And we try to find people who used to live there. As part of the application, it's not only the owner giving us information about the people who are currently living at the building, but any information they might have about people who have moved during the period where they have contact information. So it does take us some time generally to do all of that investigation and outreach. That average also includes cases where there were initial determinations of harassment, which maybe take a little bit longer time because you really need to prepare. After there's that initial determination of harassment, there's an oath hearing, right, that needs to occur before the certificate is denied. We continue to look, as always, at administratively how you can reduce the time. We did have, as I mentioned before, early in the period, right, coming out of COVID, we had some staffing challenges, and now we're in a better place. And I think we will continue to try and, for those landlords who have not harassed, right, we make a determination that there was no harassment, and we grant that certificate to try and minimize the time for that process. But again, we want to make sure that we're thorough, that we've investigated all potential allegations of harassment.
Thank you. In terms of any specific data, have you noted data? Obviously you're not 311, but have you noted any data at the intersection of immigration enforcement, harassment, that I think would, I guess, do you have any data on that at all?
I don't at HPD. I think that might be a focus of this EO13 group, to start looking at data across various challenges that immigrants are facing. I don't know. I'll turn it to my colleagues at Moya if they have any data.
We don't have anything regarding 311, but we do have data regarding the Ask Moya hotline where folks call. If you want to.
And thank you for that question, Chair. So in 2025, there were 151 calls to the Moya hotline or emails to the email account having to do with housing. And that covers a wide swath of things. That's cases of harassment, that's cases of folks looking for what types of housing assistance they may be eligible for. We don't break it down any further than that beyond it being housing related, but we do understand that that is a need.
What was the percentage of the total related to housing?
It's about a little bit under 10% of the total calls that have come in and emails that have come in are related to housing.
Okay. It would be great to understand that disaggregated data, given it is a small subset. It would be helpful to know what the buckets are that are concerning community members who are engaged in making that outreach. We want to make sure we're able to respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Aviles. Just a quick follow-up on the investigation that HPD conducts. So you are not looking for harassment yourself as an agency. You're looking to external decisions on whether harassment has been found. Is that right? And then what are you looking for?
Yeah, and to answer this question more fully, I'm going to call up Assistant Commissioner Weithman, who oversees the program, to give a more thorough answer.
Thank you for that question. So the investigation includes our investigators speak with former and current tenants. They do research in all of the city databases to find any violations, obviously issued by HPD, but also from DOB, the health department. It's a very broad reaching investigation. We also look at HCR data. We visit the building, we do inspections. And based on the investigator's report, it then goes through a legal review. And so that's based on all of the interviews of current and former tenants, as well as any stakeholders in the community. We do get sometimes we get comments from elected officials' office, obviously from CBOs and legal services providers. So it's not so much of looking if HCR has issued a determination of harassment, we would have known that. But it's really about our assessment of all of the data that we are collecting to make our own assessment as to whether or not we believe there's reasonable cause that harassment did occur.
Got it. Thank you so much. That's really helpful. So now back to Chair Encarnacion.
Thank you. So a lot of the questions about the timing and stuff is really important because I guess now with the harassment, it's like that threat is a phone call away from tearing someone's life apart, and so it is the urgency of following up on these calls is really important. And I'm, hearing that 10% of the calls to Moya kind of fall under that cross section is surprising, quite frankly. But I wanted to kind of understand how do you currently define immigration status based tenant harassment?
I mean, the callers themselves would identify it. So they would say, can give you one example of a caller coming in and saying, my landlord wants me out because of, and people will say, because I'm an immigrant. I would say that very broadly. And I know that the question was raised before regarding some of the buckets which we don't have handy, but that's a very broad sort of statement that we've received from our external affairs arm who manages some of these phone calls.
So do things like a whole building not having heat or hot water, and then you seeing like further down the line, would that be then tagged or flagged as possibly an immigrant-based threat or tactic or whatever by the landlord?
Yeah, so I can walk you through what happens now.
Okay.
Because I think that might sort of help based on how the calls and what we receive them. Typically, we get calls connected to code violations. So if there's repairs to the question you just asked, and if people say that it's basis of like national origin or harassment, we refer those to HPD. We go a little bit further there. If there's additional questions that are identified as like this is something that's constant, we'll also make a referral to CCHR, to the Commission on Human Rights, so folks have the ability to file complaints against that landlord based on harassment and issues like that.
Does anybody go out to the building?
Currently, we don't have people that go out into the building. However, we did do some work with overseeing just where the buildings are, the program that's being talked about. Our outreach team has been in the neighborhoods since the beginning of the year. We've been in about 61% of the buildings that are part of the pilot program, and that was just from the beginning of January. We find that with immigrants especially, the first touch point is also just to share information of what the thing is might be called and identified as. And that's part of some of the work that we've done in the outreach level, but we haven't directly been deployed or go to buildings per se.
Yeah, I think that that's where people are kind of falling through the cracks because there's calls being made of that all are kind of flagging possible tenant harassment due to this, but then nobody's really following. Like the onus is on the tenant to explicitly say and then look for resources and then connect to folks. And I think that if there was someone kind of going out and following up on these calls, which I know that one of the issues is Moya's current headcount. And the budget that you have for tenant outreach. So can you talk a little bit about that and what that looks like? What is the current headcount specifically for tenant outreach, know your rights, education, and yeah.
So Moya doesn't have currently a division dedicated to tenant outreach, but we do embed that work across our work as an agency, especially in our outreach team, which consists of 17 individuals.
How?
What type of work they do, you mean?
Yeah, like how is that embedded in it?
And then I can also just talk about Moya just overall. So with the external affairs team, as I mentioned with one of the data points, we have folks who are deployed to immigrant dense neighborhoods. Again, 61% of them have been deployed to the districts or zip codes in which the pilot program that we're talking about since the beginning of the year have been, providing, again, information regarding tenant rights generally. In connection to the work that we also do with our communications arm, we've also developed, and this was mentioned in the testimony, but we created and we developed and supported in developing a flyer and held a round table to share out information. This was back in 2025 on some of the issues that we were hearing regarding tenant harassment. So those are two sort of touch points that are both with our external and outreach arm as well as with our communications arm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm always gonna, fight for more to be done there. I just think that it's really hard, and that's one of the hardest things about, tenant organizing is that you have to kind of go out to and build that trust with the residents and be on site with the tenants and connect them to those resources. It's laborious work and it's not easy, right? But it's necessary if we're going to start identifying and protecting tenants and so that they can feel safer because right now the onus is really on them to step forward, and that's it's a really scary thing and a really scary reality right now. So I'm trying to kind of get to that point. When you do have a connection with someone who is facing harassment for the basis of their immigration status, what guidance do you have for them? Like what do you tell them to do?
Yeah, we certainly inform them of their right to connect with either 311 or the Commission on Human Rights if they're interested in filing a complaint, as well as sharing that they could speak based on the language that they speak, that they can be filing those complaints. So we do direct folks to CCHR.
But they're calling you and you're telling them to call someone else. So that's where I'm trying to get to. So there's no connecting Moya connecting directly to those services. They would then just know that they can go and get the services elsewhere.
That's what's been done in the past, and I think Commissioner Ali, when she first came to testify, she indicated and mentioned that we, as Moya, will be even more embedded within the affordability agenda. So step one of what we've done is increase the outreach to some of these neighborhoods that we've mentioned. Currently, the process is as I mentioned, but I know that after this hearing, and also based again on the needs across the city and citywide efforts connected to the affordability agenda of the mayor, there will be potential other touch points, but that's currently what we have as it stands.
Okay, perfect. And
And again, I'd like to say the Partners in Preservation program through their community organizers. Again, if you have not seen the flyer, certainly can leave those for you, are also in the neighborhoods, in the buildings, talking to people and directing them directly to the Commission on Human Rights.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I just feel like there's a lot being surfaced that's really helpful for us to know and understand, and continue to push for and during the budget process as well. I have some more questions, but I kind of I feel compelled to make a statement in part because of my constituents and some of the things, some of the rhetoric that I hear on the ground sometimes, and then of course, it's repeated in the media about how immigrants get everything, immigrants are taking advantage of so many services. And the reality that I think in our committee report is highlighted and what we're talking about here today, that immigrant New Yorkers and particularly undocumented immigrant New Yorkers are really not eligible for most of the programs that the city has available. And so when we're talking about the anti-harassment programs that you all run and that we're trying to strengthen here today through the Certificate of No Harassment, it's just really critical work because there are immigrant New Yorkers and particularly our undocumented immigrant New Yorkers are already living in such precarious conditions. So we really do have to advance this work further. So I want to follow up on a question that I asked before, but from the DOB perspective, if our Assistant Commissioner could join us at the dais. Again, it's a fun game of musical chairs. We're gonna administer the oath, and then I'll go into the question.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. So HPD touched on this earlier. HPD's CONH pilot program report indicated that when buildings are placed on the list, they tend to avoid undertaking serious projects that would require a certification. DOB foresee, sorry, that sentence is not very good looking English. Well, essentially, the question is from DOB's perspective, do you see any essential work being delayed from buildings that are participants in the CONH program that are on the list?
Well, the program is a deterrent, and I think that reflects in the numbers. And the essential work, whether it's gas or plumbing or electrical or essential services, that is something that is a carve out, and we do proceed with that, right? The CONH program is really there to prevent changes in the layout, right? And changes to the occupancy of the building or the C of O, major changes that the room count or the number of units. So those essential services would not be held up unless they're all combined together. They file one large application. So those are things that could complicate it, but that's where we come in when we see something like if a building is vacated, right? That's a situation where exceptions are made, right? If there's a fire or something along those lines or a structural issue.
Got it. Thank you. Have we seen a lot of these sort of bigger applications that have alteration work, but also some of the essential work? I mean, and then just getting to the bottom of it, I think I just really want to make sure that from the agency's perspective, there is not the thinking that these buildings are putting off any essential work, any work that is essential to the health and safety of tenants.
Yeah, that's not what we generally see. That's a complicated type of situation that, to try to answer your question, that's how essential work might be delayed. But the architects and engineers, that file these jobs, they're aware of what the CONH limits. And if they put in extra work that will limit them from getting their permit, it'll complicate it. So they will specifically put in, they have to answer a question that says, are you changing the layout? If they check no, they can proceed with their permit. If they check yes, then they have to have the CONH, and they get restricted by the program. So they are aware of the restrictions.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And does HPD, have you received applications for a CONH like that, where it's a big scope of work? Do you advise them to separate the work so that the essential work is completed? Welcome back, Marty.
Thank you, Chair. From HPD's perspective, we really rely on DOB to identify the buildings that do require the CONH, so we don't necessarily dig into the plans. So I can't really speak to how often that happens.
Okay. Does HPD or buildings, do you have any recommendations to changes in the definition of covered work for this, either because we want to make sure that no essential work is, not being done, or because there's other categories of work that we should be limiting for covered buildings?
At this time, we do not have any recommendations to expand that definition.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving back to just the structure of the program, local and state laws often change what constitutes tenant harassment. Two-part question, how does the CONH integrate any changes from other local laws? And second, the first pilot was before the HSTPA that strengthened rent laws in New York City, and then the pilot extension was after HSTPA. So I'm curious if HPD has analyzed or uncovered any changes in the landscape for CONH covered buildings in the pilot versus the pilot extension.
Thank you, Council Member. Definitely the change with the with the state laws impacted the incentive to harass tenants out to be able to increase the rent, tremendously upon vacancy. And so we would have to say that definitely those changes have made this type of harassment less profitable, right? I think that that's clear. I think in terms of doing any specific analysis around it, I don't think that we have done that. I will turn it over to Assistant Commissioner Srini.
It's limited, but we did look at rent impairing violations before the 2022 pilot and after the 2022 pilot for pilot buildings as compared to eligible buildings. And we found that for rent impairing violations in pilot buildings.
For what violations?
Rent impairing violations.
Yes.
Yes. There was a reduction in those violations for pilot buildings of around 16, nearly 17%, whereas for eligible buildings, rent impairing violations increased by 38%. So we do see some benefit. We can't establish causation, of course, but we did find that.
Yeah, but it indicates the program is incentivizing the right kind of behavior, which is ultimately what this is about, right? Incentivizing the kind of behavior we want to see, or disincentivizing the behavior we don't want to see. Okay. This may or may not be my last question, but the CONH program currently uses changes in ownership to calculate the Building Quality Index, BQI. How does HPD define owner for the purposes of the BQI, and how does HPD track when ownership has changed? Because we are interested in application of the CONH to building owners' entire portfolio, not just the specific property.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We have noted that proposed change and understand the thinking behind it. I think we would just say that there's limited methodologies for identifying ownership and linking ownership, and so our data there will only be as good as the property registration is. That's what we use to identify the owner right now.
Which we are going to make an online process after I get that bill back and we change the multiple dwelling registration. Okay, understood. But just in terms of the way that our bill defines buildings with a common owner, we're using the head officer, buildings with a head officer, counting those as having a common owner. What is HPD's thinking or opinion on this proxy?
Yeah, I think we're still looking into it. Again, the head officer is not always the person. We're concerned about when the head officer is not always the person that's responsible for the harassment and holding the right entity accountable. And so we're going to continue to look into this and provide some recommendations.
Got it. Thank you.
I just had one more question. For Moya, how do you collaborate with the state when it comes to tenant harassment? Like, would you ever connect someone to someone such as the Attorney General's office, for example?
We collaborate with them mostly, and again, some things will be, I think, shifting soon, but we collaborate with them mostly on legal services. So we work very closely with ONA. On the state, not as much. With housing specific issues, not that much.
Okay, perfect. And then that's last one. Last one. When a resident comes into any one of our council members' offices and we feel that we are hearing from our intakes that this sounds like a perfect case of a tenant being harassed by their landlord because of their immigration status, who should be the first call that we make it to?
You can always make it to us, and we will, and have in the past been sort of the central hub to then connect them with the right resource, with the right agency.
And
Perfect. Thank you.
I would just say if there are buildings conditions as well, you should reach out to HPD's intergovernmental office to see if we are already involved with the building or if we should be. So with a little bit of detail about what actually is happening in terms of the physical conditions of the building, Mia Perez, our intergovernmental team, takes those referrals from council members all the time.
I think it's important too that you all see us as a resource as well as being people connected to our communities. So, for example, if there are a cluster of buildings in any one of our districts, we should also be alerted so that we can help and work with those residents and offer resources that we might find available to them as well. Because I think that there are many times in the 4 months that I've been in office now, I've already encountered 4 buildings within my district that are in very bad condition, falling in disrepair, and completely related to this topic. And a few feet away from my district office that we didn't even know things were happening, and they are connected to HPD or DOB, maybe to like tenanted neighbors. But I think that closing the loop and seeing us as a resource is important as well. So hopefully that's something that we can add on, especially when there's like more than one or one property manager that has many developments in our district.
Thank you, council member. We'll definitely keep you on speed dial instead.
You know where to find us. Well, with that, well, yeah, I wanted to make this PSA, right, to the millions of people watching at home, billions, no, but to the press, right, as you cover this hearing and you cover what we're talking about here today, I think it is very important to underscore the importance for New Yorkers to call 311, right? Buildings and their tenants and landlords should always try to talk to each other first. They should try to resolve issues first. But there are those landlords who are, for one reason or another, not doing as they should. And when you call 311, when you make that complaint and HPD is able to go out there and agencies are able to go out there, you build the data sets that are, quite literally triggering all of these actions by our agencies, the CONH program, and countless others. So to the millions of you watching, maybe dozens, to the millions of you watching, just really, really underscoring that point. And to the members of the administration, thank you so much for your testimony. We're going to be moving to the public.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're just taking a 2-minute recess, and we will start up with the public comment. All right. Chair Encarnacion will be right back, but I'm going to open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a formal government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant at Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's hearing topic of the tenant harassment against immigrant New Yorkers and the certification of no harassment program, including the following legislation, intro number 839. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. And I will now call the first panel. Ibrahim Ramul from Make the Road, Divya Corrada, Urban Justice, Sebastian Perez, Legal Aid, and Katie Anderson, NYLAG. And we're going to add Peter Estes to this panel from ANHD. Okay, and whoever is ready can begin.
Good morning, council members. My name is Divya Karada, and I'm a staff attorney working at the Urban Justice Center's Safety Net Project. The Safety Net Project combines direct legal services, community organizing, and policy advocacy to advance social and economic justice for indigent New Yorkers. As a staff attorney, I work primarily on eviction defense in the Bronx through the Right to Counsel program. And while I'm here today to talk about the concerning pattern of landlords' harassment of tenants that I've personally seen with the tenants I work with, I want to highlight that the tenants who face this discrimination are hesitant to testify because of the risk of further harassment. Our office has encountered a troubling pattern of landlords targeting tenants based on their immigration status, which has even led tenants to self-evict in some cases. We've seen landlords who systemically use the threat of immigration enforcement to prevent their tenants from asserting their rights, for example, through making calls to 311s. We recommend that HPD can and must take action against these landlords by aggressively litigating 7A proceedings and comprehensive HPs to limit these landlords' engagement with vulnerable tenants. We have found that in the Bronx, tenants may not have pathways to legalize their status, which makes them especially vulnerable in this climate. The tenants that we work with had individual meetings with our managing director for immigration advice, and this is partially what has empowered them to step up and take action. However, many legal services providers do not have these kinds of resources, and the city must do more to fund the resources for immigration advice in these situations. We've also seen landlords successfully utilize calls to ICE about tenants. A tenant I worked with refused to show up to court because his landlord had been telling him that ICE would show up at the courthouse. Through the course of his case, after his landlord had actually asked me personally about his immigration status, this tenant was detained by ICE, and my office had to scramble to find immigration support for him. This is something we were able to do because we had the resources, but ultimately legal services providers do need to be able to provide this kind of advice as well.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ibrahim Ramol, and I'm a housing attorney at Make the Road, a community-based organization representing tenants in Brooklyn and Queens. We represent hundreds of tenants each year in eviction proceedings, illegal lockouts, HP cases, and 7As. Make the Road fully supports the proposal to expand and make permanent HPD's Certificate of No Harassment pilot program. Indeed, in the past year, we have seen a worrying uptick in landlord harassment and threats related to tenants' perceived or actual immigration status. Particularly, we are very concerned with the increasing number of tenants who have received threats by the landlords to call ICE or who have had ICE been called on them. These threats are often leveled not just as retaliation, as Chair Sanchez mentioned in the introduction, but also in an attempt to secure an outcome for the landlord that they would otherwise not be entitled to. For example, we've had landlords threaten to call ICE if a tenant didn't vacate within 10 days, even though there was no eviction process scheduled or no court proceeding in the works. We've also had a landlord threaten to call ICE if a tenant did not pay a new higher rent that the landlord had decided they wanted to charge, even though they had not offered a corresponding lease agreement. There are obviously laws in place and corresponding institutions where these issues are dealt with. Sometimes, however, they can feel inadequate. As has been said often now, for starters, we're in a political climate where immigrant tenants are understandably very hesitant to seek out state or local agencies, law enforcement, or other resources that are meant to help them. We've had members that Make the Road, for example, who have shared with us that their landlord threatened to call ICE on them, but who are too afraid to even tell us the full story, even anonymously, for fear of retaliation. Some of the forums are also understaffed or underfunded and are not set up to provide suitable and timely remedy, at least not on their own. For example, the fines and compensation structure in housing court can sometimes not be enough, or it may not deter landlords from continuing to engage in this unlawful behavior. So as a result, it's the case in our practice usually that harassment counterclaims are worked in with other issues during settlement negotiations, as there's historically not a strong incentive to seek out harassment finding specifically, which would punish the landlord, versus obtaining some rent reduction or related benefit, which would benefit the tenant. So we support this pilot program, and we think it'd be a great another avenue for tenants to pursue justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this legislation. My name is Katie Anderson. I'm a staff attorney at the New York Legal Assistance Group in the Tenants' Rights Unit. Across all of NYLEG's programs, we represent immigrant communities, including in True, where we represent immigrants and their families as they're being evicted. And in our practice at True, we've seen an alarming pattern of landlords attempting to circumvent the legal proceeding for an eviction, for starting an eviction case by threatening retaliation against their clients based on their immigration status. This pattern is across many different housing types, from rent-stabilized apartments to public housing to even superintendent apartments. One of our clients in a rent-stabilized apartment had his landlord stop accepting rent and told him if he did not vacate his apartment, that he would call ICE, even though no formal eviction process had been commenced at that point. Another immigrant client in public housing was told by a Nycc employee that they would call ICE if he continued to try to assert his son's rights to the apartment. And in yet another case, an undocumented client of ours was working as a super, where his only compensation was his apartment. When he filed an unemployment complaint, his landlord started multiple eviction proceedings against him, to the point that our client left the apartment and self-deported back to the DR. The threat of retaliation deeply impacts our clients, as there's little recourse available for this behavior, especially since many of our clients don't want to go on the record in housing court on these issues and face further retaliation. Housing is just one of the ways that our immigrant clients face this harassment in their day-to-day lives, and this proposed legislation is a meaningful step towards extending protection and accountability, with our immigrant clients being especially vulnerable to harassment and retaliation based on their immigration status. It's our sincere hope that City Council will make this pilot program permanent and ensure that immigrant New Yorkers are not harassed out of their homes.
Good morning, Chair Sanchez and Chair Encarnacion. My name is Sebastian Perez, and I am a staff attorney with the Legal Aid Society's. That was fast. The Legal Aid Society's Housing Justice Group Advocacy Unit in Manhattan. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the proposed enhancements to the Certificate of No Harassment program. While this program is a vital shield against unlawful displacement, our practice sees firsthand how the current framework can leave our city's most vulnerable neighbors, particularly immigrant tenants, exposed to predatory tactics. As the council is aware, harassment is defined by any act or omission intended to force a lawful occupant to surrender their rights to vacate their home. For immigrant New Yorkers, this harassment often takes a specific sinister form: the threat of ICE or DHS involvement and deportation. This looming threat creates a silent tax where tenants endure illegal living conditions out of the fear of retaliation. Our case stories illustrate why we need more robust protections and earlier triggers proposed in our recommendations. For example, in Manhattan, we represent tenants who lived without heat or hot water for a full decade. They remained silent because their landlord told them that as immigrants they had no rights and that any complaint would result in ICE removal. It was only when the building lost all water and electricity this year that they felt they had no choice but to seek legal help. In the Bronx, a landlord attempted to dismantle a tenant association by threatening to call ICE on residents for simply meeting in the lobby. The landlord went as far as posting physical notices throughout the building using federal immigration enforcement as a tool to suppress organized advocacy. A second case in the Bronx, after an immigrant family with minor children refused an illegal $700 rent increase on a misclassified market rate unit, the landlord filed a false criminal complaint with ICE and left copies of the filing on the family's doorstep to terrorize them. We are currently seeking a permanent injunction to stop this egregious behavior. These are not isolated incidents, they are everyday reality for immigrant tenants because an ultimate legal finding of harassment is notoriously difficult to secure and often requires years of litigation. We urge the council to incorporate earlier triggers for CONH requirements. We cannot wait for the most egregious cases to reach a final judgment before the program's protections kick in. By then, the damage is often done and tenants are often gone.
Did you conclude?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you.
Good morning, and thank you to Committee Chair Sanchez and Encarnacion and members of the committees for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Peter Estes, and I'm Senior Housing Policy Associate at the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development. ANHD is composed of over 80 community-based organizations working toward housing, economic, and racial justice all across the city. Tenant harassment is one of the most pernicious tools of displacement. Landlords neglect essential services, ignore repairs, use unpermitted construction to make homes unlivable, and inundate tenants with unsolicited buyout offers. These tactics are wielded most effectively against those with fewest resources to fight back: elderly and disabled tenants, mixed status families, and low-income New Yorkers. As highlighted clearly today, our immigrant neighbors face additional layers of harassment. ANHD members have reported an increase in landlords calling ICE on tenants who organized to improve building conditions, targeting them through discriminatory racial and ethnic profiling. These chilling acts come against the backdrop of intensified federal attacks on immigrants and require urgent action. We must do everything in our power at the local level to reaffirm our commitment to safety through community and strong, stable neighborhoods. The CONH program is a critical tool to deter harassing behavior. ANHD helped lead the original campaign for the program, passed in 2018 and improved by the Council in 2021, which targets buildings at elevated risk of harassment. When an owner of a listed building seeks permits for covered categories of alterations, they must first demonstrate that no harassment has occurred, or face a 5-year freeze on permits that put tenants at risk of displacement, with an option to cure the denial by providing permanently affordable housing. The program covers just 2.5% of eligible buildings, perhaps too few, but it is working to identify the buildings where tenants are most at risk. Denial rates are significantly higher than in comparable CONH programs, and buildings on the list have seen noteworthy reductions in violations relative to similar buildings. I have a few.
You may conclude.
Sorry. ANHD strongly supports making the program permanent with a few targeted improvements. First, extending protections portfolio-wide when a landlord is denied a CONH, similar spirit as the proposed changes from the council member's current bill, but maybe go beyond. 2, requiring a CONH before any building sale to interrupt cycles of displacement. Recalculating the building qualification index annually rather than every 5 years. And retaining buildings with pre-2021 harassment findings so that landlords cannot simply age out of accountability for actions during some of the most tumultuous years in our city. We also do not think that HPD's proposed change to the cure presented in their report, which would replace the affordable housing requirement with an independent monitor, is a sufficient deterrent or a meaningful consequence. I have other recommendations for ways to strengthen the program that we've discussed, and they're included in my written testimony. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. I know many of you have actually worked with some of the residents in my district specifically in some of the cases, and so I just thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one follow-up question on the many stories that you all highlighted. So are you in every instance pursuing a finding of harassment in these cases? And if you are, what are the time drivers, or what are the barriers to that finding being ruled by the judge?
I can start. One of the biggest barriers is obviously that in a housing court, the record is public. So many of our clients don't want to have that be on the public record. And, we are always cognizant of that. And, sometimes we're talking in circles around these. Also, it can be very difficult to find a harassment finding in housing court. You would have to go to trial. That obviously exposes clients to a lot of risk in that sense too. And, depending on the kind of case, at the end of the day, even if a judge finds harassment, they might just say, well, you still owe $50,000 in rent. So there's a lot of complicating factors to actually pursuing that in housing court.
The judges don't award damages or anything like that?
They could, but they can still say that there's rent that's owed. And ultimately, in a lot of non-payment cases, that's what judges are focused on, at least in my experience.
Okay. And are you always filing for harassment?
At least in my case, it depends on the client how much they want to be included on the record.
Okay, so the stories that you're sharing with us, we would love to follow up, would love to just understand the breakdown of how often you did file, whether CONH should, consider anything different in the determination that we're enabling HPD to find. Yeah.
So to answer, I think one of your later questions, we always try to include harassment in our pleadings because it's such a broad definition that it's kind of easy to meet when our clients are telling us the stories of why they want to pursue litigation to begin with. And then the difficult part, I think, just to kind of piggyback off of that, is yes, it requires, the presumption is that a finding of harassment, you have done all this legwork up front, that you have found a client. If you're working with a group, you've been able to form a group together that kind of wants to move forward to begin with. And then you get the initial court date, then the second court date, if you need a hearing. And once again, that's all presumed to have happened if you are requiring a final determination of harassment.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much, and we'd love to follow up with you. Thank you. The next panel will consist of Anna Baker-Hans from Cooper Square Committee, Van Cello from Mixteca, Thomas Ducklet, Ruira, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, Ruira Lubega, and Zachary Hall. And whoever is ready can begin.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, good morning or good afternoon. My name is Anna Baker-Haynes. I'm a tenant organizer with Cooper Square Committee, and I'm speaking on behalf of a tenant I organize with. And I just want to note that 3 of us here are all testifying about the same building. So now I'm switching to my tenant's testimony. Good afternoon. My name is Shira Beckwith. I've been a tenant at 109 East 9th Street, which is a single-room occupancy building since 1992. When we got a new landlord a few years ago, I learned about the CONH program from the HPD investigator who was responsible for determining if the landlord should get a CONH or not. The landlord was successful in getting a CONH, and as soon as he got it, he moved to evict me and some other tenants and significantly stepped up his harassment in other ways. My building's tenants association was successful in having his CONH rescinded this year with a ton of help from Take Root Justice and Cooper Square Committee. Without this help, I would have already lost my home, and I think other tenants would be way worse off. Even though we had a bumpy road with the CONH program, I believe the CONH program is good and necessary. Since the CONH has been rescinded, the landlord hasn't been able to do any further major work on the building, where he had proposed construction, including removing the roof and having all of the tenants move out for an unspecified period of time. I'm definitely in favor of landlords needing certificates of no harassment. In my experience, the current program is far from perfect and needs some work. My landlord should not have been able to get one in the first place, and it required a full trial at oath, the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, to get it rescinded. But at the same time, I can imagine that without this program, tenants in situations like ours would be way worse off. I hope you will vote to make the CONH program permanent and will work with tenants who have gone through the program to improve it and better protect us. And some of my fellow neighbors who are here today will provide some specific suggestions for how they believe the CONH program can be improved. And when we circle back to questions, I, Anna, a tenant organizer, would love to speak more to the question that you, Councilmember Sanchez, asked about the ability to get repairs under the CONH program.
Thank you.
Good morning, council members. My name is Van. I'm the community organizer at Nycc, a community-based organization in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, that has served immigrant, Latin, and indigenous communities for over 25 years. As a community-based organization that provides direct services to our community members, we've heard several stories of their lived experiences, many of which are around housing. We've heard stories of community members being harassed by their landlords, where they're being threatened to move out of their apartments or have ICE called on them. We've heard community members during Know Your Rights workshops share how they are worried to ask for housing repairs because they are unsure of how their status might impact the relationship with their landlords. Throughout our Know Your Rights workshops, we try our best to inform our community members about their tenant rights regardless of their immigration status. But this is just one part of addressing these issues. This is why we should have the Intro 0839 be passed. Having the certification of no harassment, the pilot program, become permanent would be creating an additional solution around these harassments. Requiring property owners to undergo an investigation of harassment or of any violation of tenants' rights will not only hold them accountable, but ensure there is an end to these ongoing threats and coercion. There are many of our community members who are also not fully aware that they can look up buildings' harassment history. On top of that, several of our community members also lack computer literacy in order to do this type of research. Having clear visible signage of any harassment filing against building owners for tenants to see would aid community members drastically. Being aware of the building owner's harassment history and of their tenant rights would empower our community members to speak up when there is a housing repair that is needed to occur. Thank you so much for your time and hearing us all today.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Zachary Hall. I'm a tenant in an SRO building that until recently had a CONH. CONH programs help protect tenants from predatory landlords by ensuring they cannot obtain permits or drastically alter their buildings if they are engaging in harassing conduct. I believe that CONH programs are an important tool not just for SRO buildings, but also other forms of affordable housing. I feel the CONH program should be expanded and redesigned to further protect tenants that have affordable housing. This program protected me and other tenants in my building from having our homes taken from us by the landlord. To my mind, the person who bought our building 5 years ago had a predatory intention. Because I am an SRO tenant, I rent a private room but share common area facilities with my neighbors in the building, like showers, toilets, and kitchen. When our landlord purchased our building, he removed 2 of our shared toilets, 1 of our showers, and the building's only kitchen. He told us he did this to cure an old DOB violation that he needed to secure a CONH to restore the shared facilities. At the time he applied for the CONH, I wasn't aware that this conduct counted as harassment. I was under the impression that harassment was in the more common sense of the word. After he secured the CONH, the landlord started doing construction on vacant units in the building, but did not restore our shared facilities, and he started to try to convince my neighbors and I to move out. We became concerned that the landlord might be trying to displace us. After months of organizing with my neighbors and diligent communication with HPD about the issues we were facing, HPD found probable cause for harassment and initiated a case in the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings to rescind the building's CONH. During the trial, the oath judge concluded that the landlord provided no credible evidence that he removed our essential services to clear a DOB violation, even when the landlord was supposed to prove it in court. The judge concluded that tenant harassment had occurred by the landlord and the building's CONH was rescinded, which means that our landlord can no longer pursue redeveloping our building for at least 3 years, after which he will be eligible to apply for a CONH again. I have a little bit more.
You may conclude, yeah.
Okay. One way I think the CONH program can be improved is by helping ensure NYC tenants are better informed of the various forms of tenant harassment that can occur. There are a vast array of tactics and loopholes that new landlords can use to pressure long-standing tenants with affordable rents. In fact, I've seen multiple websites that reference the CONH as just a mere formality to acquire in the pursuit to redevelop a building. Had we been better informed by the city and the CONH program about all the possible forms of harassment, we may have been able to prevent the landlord from receiving a CONH in the first place. However, the CONH program still protected us in the long run by creating important checks and balances that help protect tenants. I hope that you will vote to make the CONH program permanent and, if anything, figure out methods to expand it. I hope you can also find ways for tenants to be made better aware of their rights and help them identify and understand the true meaning of what constitutes tenant harassment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll endeavor to read 3 minutes into 2 and skip over some things that were significantly addressed. Thomas Dukas, the resident of 109 East 9th Street, Manhattan. We've endured harassment followed by the landlord CONH application, over which our landlord coerced us into cooperating with the application, and ongoing problems since the CONH suspension and extraordinary rescission following a court finding of harassment at the Oath Court. An entryway signage rule should be considered to direct tenants to information about how to recognize and report harassment and protections for doing so. Complaints need to be allowed some form of free text for when drop-down forms are inadequate to describe the problem. HPD complaint forms are especially problematic in not allowing many complaints to be filed merely because the drop-down field does not provide a means to properly identify the location or nature of the problem. Inspectors should be able to gain access in due course of time and not merely close complaints for landlord refusal to provide access. Effective protection of tenants should not have some complaint or violation inspectors presumptively giving landlords the benefit of doubt. Tenants have almost always exhausted the cooperative approach when they have finally made complaints. Some inspectors, presuming that tenants generally overstate complaints and that landlords should not be bothered by complaints relating to fundamental building functions, simply ignore the real world. Yes, I've met such inspectors. Landlords should not have blanket allowance to self-certify curing violations, especially when they have a problematic pattern of complaints or suspicion of harassment. Tenants should have some means of providing information to violation hearings. Landlords all too easily act with impunity for having violations repeatedly dismissed for being given the benefit of doubt when falsely claiming that violations have been cured or never actually existed in the first place. Outstanding violations should have enforcement. There should be no presumption that landlords are above enforcement.
You may conclude.
The CONH application process should be accompanied by notices posted in common areas and individually distributed tenants, guiding tenants to resources describing the function, the risks of the landlord having a CONH, and how to effectively allow or to oppose a CONH, which will be recognized by the CONH issuing agency. Risks identified should include how to discover real-world information about what landlords can do and have done to undermine tenant protections after being granted a CONH. CONH application investigators inquiring with tenants should have training about recognizing tenant intimidation and coercion and acting for such a process.
And you can submit all of this testimony if you want to wrap up.
Tenants in the building where I live have experienced accelerated efforts to drive us out after the CONH was suspended and even rescinded. Finally, I'd like to raise a point that I think Anna suggested you go back to in some questions. When the landlord has impermissibly destroyed housing units and essential facilities without a CONH, there should be some process for restoring those facilities without granting a COH. Granting a CONH for harassing destruction would be rewarding the landlord for that destruction. There is no obvious resolution yet to an impasse between some types of repairs and a lack of a CONH, but council should be cautioned against opening a loophole for abuse. A possible resolution might involve a very limited exemption with a carefully constrained contract to which all parties agree, but the law may not allow for such contracts. Changing the law to provide an exemption could too easily make any COH protections meaningless. So please be careful.
Thank you so much for those additional ideas. Please do submit them so that we have them during the amendment consideration process. I did want to follow up on your earlier point about the tenant perspective on whether a CONH holds back any or holds up any necessary work.
Thank you so much. And I want to start with just like a quick disclaimer that the three of us are speaking about an SRO building. So that's part of a CONH program prior to this pilot program. And I'm not sure if there's like nuance in how repairs can or cannot be made that's different between like the SRO buildings and the pilot program buildings. But the tenants have spoken to the fact that their landlord removed their common area facilities. So all tenants only have access to 2 toilets, 1 shower, and no kitchen in their building. And he also, the landlord also gutted vacant apartments, which can be a fire hazard. DOB has asserted that the building is completely safe for tenants to be in, and we completely agree. But since the CONH has been rescinded, DOB and HPD have asserted that a CONH would be required to restore common facilities and to restore the gutted apartments. We don't agree with that stance. We think that there should be room for very specific, as Thomas said, and supervised work to add to tenant safety and their experience at the building. But we have to be really careful about like what kind of work is allowed so that landlords aren't taking advantage of this to make conditions worse for tenants. But in the experience of tenants at 109, they have not been able to get repairs or services restored in the ways that they'd like.
Got it. Thank you. That's very helpful. And it sounds like more of an exception to the general rule.
We're not exactly sure the difference. I think it'd be worth following up with HPD.
Okay, great. So we do have to move forward, but last comment and then we'll go.
HPD Legal has no objection to this. There are some rules that the DOB is trying to follow that are posing a bit of a problem.
I also feel that the consequences for a landlord committing tenant harassment are very low, and perhaps this program can deal with these matters. In our case, once the landlord acquired a CONH, the harassment against tenants increased exponentially, as if he proved he didn't harass tenants. He continues his harassments with us with little to actually deter him, even after the CONH has been revoked.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for testifying today, and I look forward to your testimony in writing. Oh, there was one person we'd called before, just making sure she's not here or they're not here. Ruira Lubega. Yeah. So Lubega will be first, and then we have Amadou Lee, Amar Dieng, Gora Da, MDA Sire Duka, Cheek Dial, and Mustafa Kane. I think you might be next door, so come on over and testify. Good to see you. Let me read them again. Amar Dieng, Gora Dia, Deye Sire Duka, and then Cheek or Cheik Dial, and Mustafa Kane.
I have to translate. I need to sit somewhere.
Okay, I think the best place is for you to sit next to the microphone, and the person who you are translating to, they switch and sit with you. But Mr. Lubega, do you want to go first?
Yes.
You speak English? Yeah?
Yes,
Okay, perfect. So Mr. Lubega can start, and then we go with those who need the translation support.
Good afternoon. My name's Rothra Rubega. I'm a transgender man. I'm a migrant from Uganda. I'm here to complain about SE's Place, the shelter located in Queens. It is under destination tomorrow. Last year I was beaten and they took me to the hospital. I've tried to reach out to DHS, to several human rights defenders to see that they advocate for me. I've never got support. As a migrant, I'm in this country alone. I ran out of my country back home, Uganda, to seek for safety as a transgender person. But the way they treat me at the shelter is not good. Sometimes I feel even like ending my life. I work as a home health aide. I work 36 hours. I told them that, please, help me, at least you get for me a SATO voucher. I know I'm hardworking. After the lease, I will manage to pay for the rent. I gave them all my information, but when the package came back, they just told me that there's some information that was not there. When I tried to reach out to the programs director at the shelter, Ms. Sherry, is the same woman that told the caseworker to fight me. I have the pictures. By the time when I was in the hospital, she just told me that I should go back to my home country. This is not my country. So, are we supposed to be treated like that? Back home, I have no my family. They disowned me. I came here. I'm alone in this country. Why is it that I'm being treated like that? I don't eat food at the shelter. They don't give me anything.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Lubega, you are not alone. Thank you for coming here to share your story. I'm gonna have somebody follow up with you just to get your information to make sure that we can follow up. But you are not alone. And this country is supposed to be a place where you can feel safe and be yourself. So you have my commitment, and I know Chair Encarnacion's too, that we will follow up with you and see what is it that happened here and how can we step in.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lubega.
Thank you so much.
So now I believe folks are together, so you can begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you so much for staying here and listening to the concern of our community. I'm reading this on behalf of her. Her name is Nycc. I want to speak about what it feels like when housing insecurity slowly become part of your daily life, even when you are doing everything right. As a woman, I have learned that instability do not always look like eviction notices. Sometimes it looks like constant pressure to stay afloat, taking any work available, even when it does not match your skills, just to make sure rent is paid. It looks like living month to month without knowing if you will be stable next month. I have training and experience, but stable employment is still difficult to secure. That job instability directly affect housing stability. When income is uncertain, housing becomes uncertain too. You cannot fully plan your life when every decision is shaped by survival. I have also seen how women in my community often endure unfair treatment in housing situations quietly. Some do not report problems or harassment because they are afraid of losing their housing or creating conflict with landlords. Even when conditions feel wrong, silence can feel like the only option. This is why protection like the certification of no harassment program matters. They help ensure that tenants are not pushed out or pressured through harmful practices and that there is accountability before displacement happens. At the same time, I also want to highlight something very important. When housing instability happens, people need a way to move quickly and safely while investigations are taking place. This is why I support the bilingual workforce program proposed by the Amadou Lee Foundation, which will help people access jobs and guidance in languages they understand. For many of us, this is the kind of support that would allow us to stay stable or relocate without falling into crisis if housing problems or harassment make situation unsafe. That was on behalf of her.
Thank you. And if they want to speak in their language first and you translate, that is welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can feel like they're, speaking.
Okay. Yeah.
Both are welcome.
Okay, great. So yeah, you want est-ce que bëgg nga ma wax wala ma waxal la waxal ma translator la waxal olof ma waaw da ngay wax rek comme ni nga xam ne moom mooy li nga nekkee charte li ngay gis.
Ok, mais charte bien.
waaw li ngay gis da ngay nuyoo pare.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you. Assalamualaikum. maa ngi leen di nuyu ñëpp maa ngi di fay den sant ak seen teewaay Amadou maa la jaajëfal la ok si shelter laa nekk mais gars yi am ñi fay liggéeyee ñu may traité ni ñu wax ak man ñàkk respect dañ ma jox cër dañ lay yuuxu di la harcelé
waxalal ñoom
waaw loolu la quoi dañ ma yuuxu di la harcelé lekk bi tam baaxul waaw loolu la quoi.
Okay, my name is Alpha Balde. I'm currently in a shelter. I get mistreated a lot in there. I'm gonna go into what he wrote because I think he's a bit shy. I've arrived in the United States as an asylum seeker in 2023, hoping for safety and a better life. Since my arrival, the conditions I face have been extremely difficult. When I first arrived in New York, I had no shoes, no laces, and had to spend my first night outside in freezing temperatures. I then stayed at Jamaica Center and later at Hall Street Center shelter in Brooklyn, where I was often ignored when I asked for help. The staff was unkind, and at times the treatment felt racist. The food was frozen and inedible, and I lost weight. Now in my current shelter, the food is much better, and I would like to say that I do appreciate those changes. As an immigrant, I have seen how easily people like me can be taken advantage of in housing system. Tenant harassment, especially against immigrants, is a real problem. We often face discrimination, unfair treatment, and fear of being displaced because we don't have the same protections or resources that others do. Many of us live in constant fear of losing our homes, especially in shelters or in housing. This is why I strongly support the certification of no harassment program and the proposal to make it permanent. It is crucial that protection against harassment do not end once we leave the shelter system. When shelter residents like myself face harassment or instability in shelter, we are at risk of being pushed into housing under unfair conditions, where landlord may harass us, overcharge us, or even attempt to displace us. If this program is extended to cover more people, we can protect vulnerable immigrants from these kinds of abuse. C'est bon?
C'est bon.
Okay. Kilifa gi.
Ok.
Thank you.
Da ngay wax. Mën nga wax en wolof wala ma kii wala.
waaw traduire ma.
Ma traduire la. Su la neexee mën nga wax en wolof tamit ma traduire la.
Hi, good afternoon, member of the council. My name is Cheikh Diaw. I want to explain in Wolof, translated by Amadou Lee. Okay.
You're gonna have to pay me for this.
Waa man fi may waxe mooy ci sama expérience ci location appartement yi nga xam ni ñoo nekk ci dëkk bi ñun suñu communauté dañu am ay jafe-jafe yoo xam ni pour am accès ci appartement directement parfois sax dañuy gis appartement ci benn site web wala benn propriétaire bu ñu koy woo téléphone wala ñu koy envoyé message day yomb ci ñun ñu wax ak ñun quoi mais bu ñu teewee physiquement day mel ni ki day xaw a soppeeku lool parce que suñu wax ak ñoom daal daanaka duñ ci am benn continuité quoi parce que li ñuy bëgg du yomb ci ñun nag li ñu bëggoon mooy ku ñu jàppale ci ñuy mën a am ci logement ci dëkk bi muy nekk loo xam day nekk façon direct pas muy nekk indirect ñu jàppale ñu ci loolu daal moo nekkoon sama bëgg-bëgg merci beaucoup.
Hi, my name is Shehuna Joe. I'm truly happy to be here. In my community, including myself, many times when we inquire about housing or apartment issues, if it's done via email or if it's done via message, it's usually not a problem. However, when we appear physically, then it becomes a problem. We would like for the council to make it more flexible within whatever power is available within your discretionary. That way, that they can be a solution to pretty much the discrimination that takes place within that. I believe that's what he's trying to say. All right. Okay. Okay.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Goran Jai. I want to speak about what it means to try to build an education and career while also trying to keep a stable place to live. I'm currently a student while also working to support myself. I go to school to BMCC. I'm passionate about financial market strategies and building business that create values. So my long term is to combine finance and entrepreneurship to develop impactful projects in the future. Like many immigrants I know, I'm trying to do everything at once: study, work, and manage rent in one of the most expensive city in the country. Because of that pressure, many of us end up sharing rooms and subletting space, not because we want to, but because it is the only way to survive financially. That kind of housing situation affects everything. It is hard to focus on school when you are worried about whether your living arrangement will change next month. It is hard to plan for the future when your housing depends on informal arrangement that can shift it anytime. I have also seen how housing instability can become worse when people do not fully understand their right or the housing systems. Some tenants accept unfair conditions or sudden change because they are afraid of losing the only place they have, especially when communication is unclear or there is a language barrier. Amadou Foundation has been very important in their regard. They help people understand city systems in a way that is clear and practical. They explain housing information, connecting people to resources, and translate key information so we can actually make informed decisions instead of guessing or relying on others who may not have our best interest in mind. For many of us, they are the first place we turn when something about housing or service is confusing. The certification of harassment program is also important because it recognizes that housing instability is not just about rent, it is also about whether people are being pressured or pushed out in ways that are not always visible. When tenants are protected from harassment, they are more likely to stay stable long enough to finish school, keep working, and build a future. thank you for these programs. I hope you can also provide clear and accessible support system and guidance we can actually use when we are under pressure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job. Hi, my name is Amarje. I'm truly grateful for this opportunity and thank you for being here to listen to what we have to say. I want to speak about respect, communication, and safety in housing situations, especially for immigrants. In many cases, the problems faced are not always visible or direct. They often come from fear, misunderstanding, and lack of clear communication. When someone does not fully understand English, even simple housing issue can become confusing and overwhelming. People may not know their rights or may not be able to clearly explain what is happening to them. One of the biggest fear in our community is what can happen when tenants speak up. There are situations where people feel that if they complain about rent increases, poor conditions, or unfair treatment, they risk retaliation. Some tenants even fear that landlord or brokers may try to involve immigration authorities as a way to pressure them or to force them out. Whether or not it is openly stated, this fear exists, and it makes many people stay silent even when they are being treated unfairly. This is why protection is not just about housing laws, it is also about what happens when situations escalate beyond housing. I want to highlight the importance of reinforcing the Amadou Lee Foundation Habeas Urgent Response Program. In our community, this program has supported families in moments where someone was suddenly detained by ICE, including situations where people believe the detention may have been triggered after housing or community disputes. In those moments, families are often confused, afraid, and completely unsure when their loved ones is or where their loved one is or what steps to take. The Amadou Lee Foundation steps in quickly to locate individuals, provide guidance, and connect families to legal support. That rapid response is often the only resource or source of clarity in a very chaotic situation. So for many of us, knowing this support exists changes how safe we feel when speaking up. It means that if reporting housing harassment or unfair treatment ever leads to immigration enforcement consequences, there is an organization that will respond, guide us, and help protect our right in real time. This is why reinforcing the Habeas Urgent Response Program is so important. It gives people the confidence that they're not alone if things go wrong after they report harassment or unfair treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to this panel. And I just want to underscore discrimination in this city is illegal. And you have rights. No matter your immigration status, it does not matter. And so if you don't feel comfortable or if you know people who do not feel comfortable making the complaint, Amadou welcome you to, again, contact me, right? Contact my office, contact any of your city council members, because we are here to defend you, you know? And the biggest barrier sometimes is that education and knowing what the rights are. But since you are here today, you should know and bring it back to the rest of the community that you break bread with, that is your family. You let them know they have rights and we're here to defend and protect. So thank you so much for your testimony today. I hear you on the advocacy for the budget. We have our deputy whip here today who is in key conversations, and it's very important that you're here today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Li mu wax mooy li nga xam ne moom lañ ñëw wax ni dafa important waaye tamit li mu ci bëgg a teg mooy ñoom dañoo jug pour protéger leen donc képp koo xam ne daf ci am problème wala lu mel noonu wala nga dëkk fenn ñu lay buntu xatal moom nee na mën ngeen ko woo directement wala ngeen jaar ci man su ko defee ngeen wax ko directement ñoom ñu def ci luñ ci war a def képp nag la ci wax nee na parce que dëkk bi dafa am yoon te yoon bi dañ ko war a topp donc ñoom ñoo mën jëlee ci loolu donc loolu la bëggoon ma baaxee leen ko di aussi remercier leen ci li ngeen ñëw fii pour wax all right léegi nañ bàyyi yeneen groupe bi ñëw toog jërëjëf beneen groupe yor papier mën ngeen ñëw.
The next group is Modou Diop, Tierno Diaye, Alpha Balde, Serigne Faye, Mamadou Niang,
Ku yoroon papier Serigne Faye.
And Ibrahima Diallo.
Ibrahima Diallo. Okay.
Later you have to give me a grade on how my pronunciation is.
Nah, I think you're doing fine. I think you're doing. Because trust me, you're doing fine actually. Yeah. I warned them earlier. I thought, yeah. Huh? Bantu. Kan mo yung document Serigne Faye? Okay, dama talk up in your hall. Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Abdul Tal. Mamatok. I want to speak about how quickly stability can. I'm sorry, this is on behalf of Ham, Abdul Tal, who is apprehended. My name is Abdul Tal. I want to speak about how quickly stability can disappear and how everything becomes connected: housing, work, family, and safety. On October 22nd, 2025, I was apprehended by ICE on Canal Street. It was sudden, confusing, and frightening. In a moment, I went from trying to live my life and work to being taken away without understanding why. My friends and family did not know where I was. I did not know what would happen next. A video of my arrest was captured and spread online. It went viral. People across the country saw me being taken away. And because of that attention, when I was finally released, that video also went viral. But what those videos do not show is what happens in between. When someone is detained, housing stability can collapse immediately. Rent cannot be paid, rooms are lost, and families are left trying to survive without support. Everything you were building can disappear in a matter of days. The Amadou Lee Foundation stepped in when I had no one else. They filed a habeas petition, sent commissary funds, challenged my detention, and stayed in contact with my family the entire time. They made sure that I was not lost in the system. On Christmas Day, 2025, I was released and reunited with my friends and family. I'm standing here today because of that intervention. And I want to be clear. My case became visible because it went viral, but many others do not. There are many people who are detained quietly, without cameras, without attention, and without anyone knowing their names. The Amadou Lee Foundation continued to step in for those people too. They have helped many detainees in our community, people who would have otherwise remained lost in the system, by challenging unlawful detentions and helping them bring back to their families. I also want to thank the members of the council members who came out and protested when I was arrested. I did not have the chance to meet you at that time, but your support matters. What happens to me has created fear in the community. When people see someone taken like that, it makes them feel afraid to speak up. Even in housing situation, if someone is facing harassment or unsafe conditions, they may stay silent because they're afraid of what could happen next. That is why laws like the Certification of No Harassment Program are important, because they help protect tenants from being pushed out. But protection alone are not enough if people are too afraid to use them. This is why it is critical to strengthen our foundation so we can actually, so they can be more comfortable presenting. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. But remind them they can speak too.
So bëggee
That way they hear
mën
each
nga
other.
waxal li nga xam ne moom moo xew ci sa case après man ma translate ko waxal rek sa situation nu mu commencé comme dañu jàppee yooyu da ngay nuyoo. Oh sorry, the mic.
Assalamu alaikum. My name Alin Sembe. Man nag li mu metti mooy dama fay ñëw ànd fekk sama famille mais kenn du prothèse du dara parce que dama dem uy ji immigration ñu yóbbu ma détention gisuma sama famille nekk ci ay situation yoo xamante ni xëy na bu duloon nag Amadou Limi foofu duma fa génne te en même temps ci selt lay dund ba tey ji ma bëggoon ku ma jàppale ci loolu pour ma mën a nekk ak sama famille daal.
nan ngay dundee chalte bi
chalte ma nekk
la ci neexul
si dañ fay am ay problème parce que lekk biñ fay adopté wu boobu adopté wu ñu su vaut mieux que dañuy mujjee génn dem di uti feneen lekk.
Okay. Hi, my name is Aliwin Semben. I came to America with my family. Ñaata doom ngam? I have two kids, and I live in a shelter right now with my family. Previously, I was detained by ICE when I went for a check-in. Had it not been for the Ahmad Ali Foundation, I probably wouldn't be here. But what I would like to also speak about is that at the shelter, we face many hardships. One of those is the food that is given. Many times we cannot eat those foods. Sometimes, la moo nekk ci lekk bi?
non lekk bi dafa adopté wu rek maanaam ñun lekk bi ñu bëgg. Souvent toujours bu jot dañu koy jox dañ koy dem tuuri si koo xamante ni maanaam liggéeyul.
At times, the food is frozen. At times, the food isn't adapted to what the kids should eat. And he's asking that they could be, it would be awesome if they can take in consideration those things and make it better. But that he is grateful that he has a place to live, that he is welcome also in his place as well, and his family. That's what he wanted to say. All right.
Thank you. How do you say thank you?
Jërëjëf.
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 See? Jërëjëf.
All right. Da ngay lire wala ma lire la?
ma jox nga liiram.
Man nga lire. Dégg nga kii.
dégg ma anglais.
Modou Diop. Modou Diop est-ce que doo wax li nga xam ne moo nekk ci yow du xam nga lu ci nekk.
xam naa ko
waxal olof. na ngi nuyoo.
asalaamaaleykum maa ngi tudd Modou Diop maa ngi dëkkoon ci salte bu ñuy wax 316 Atlantic Avenue si Brooklyn waaye dama fa am ay jafe-jafe yu métti lool ndax joxun ma sama yelleef parce que mën naa ne def naa fa luy war a toll si 6 mois léegi nag samay kayit dañ ko sànni sama kayit immigration dañ ko sànni sama work permit dañ ko sànni sama social dañ ko sànni sama yére tamit dañ ko sànni en même temps dañ ma mujjee génn foofu def naa si mbedd mi ñaari fan door dem binduwaat pour mën a amaat beneen kër te même fi ma nekk tamit su ma amoon lu ma gën a nekk si kër gu normal parce que maa ngi fay dund ay jafe-jafe yu xaw a compliqué daal su ma amoon lu ma gën a ñu jàppale ma pour ma mën a am dëkkuwaay en même temps soxla woon naa avocat tamit pour sama wàllum kayit yeeg yooyu noonu.
Hi, my name is Modi Diop. I'm going to cheat and look at the documents, right? So don't mind me. My name is Modi Diop. I'm here to share my experience after living in a shelter system for 3 years. And I would like to thank you, the council, for listening to us and for taking your time. We truly appreciate it. I would also like to urge your support into intro 1630 T2026, 1639, and T2026, 1582 to make the certification no harassment program permanent and expand its protection. During my time in the shelter, I have experienced serious instability. My belongings, including clothing and important documents, were thrown away, and I was moved from one shelter to another after not being notified. This made it difficult to maintain stability or move forward with my life. Many of us in shelters are there because we were pushed out of housing in the first place. As an immigrant, I have seen how fear and vulnerability are often used against people. Tenant harassment happens when landlords try to force people out of their homes by making life difficult or scary, like refusing repairs, using threats, or treating tenants unfairly. For immigrants, this can be even worse because some people are afraid to speak up or may not know their rights. I also faced discrimination and favoritism in the shelter system. At times, it felt like residents were not treated equally and decisions were made without explanation. I experienced religious discrimination as well. Personal religious items, including the Qurans and other symbols, were discarded. This raised serious concern about whether our rights are respected at these stages from housing to shelter. The rules in shelters were also very strict. Missing curfew could result in being forced to wait in isolation, adding stress to people already trying to rebuild their lives. These conditions shows what can happen when people lose stable housing due to lack of protection and accountability. Organizations like the Ahmad Ali Foundation have been a lifeline when landlords attempt to take advantage of immigrant tenants, sometimes by forcing them out without legal process or using or using intimidation. We turn to them for support. They provide critical know your rights information and help us understand what these actions are formed, that these actions are a form of tenant harassment, not legal evictions. Because of their intervention, many families have been able to remain in their homes instead of being displaced. This is why the certification of no harassment program is so important. It is like a checkpoint. Before landlords can do major renovations, they must prove they do not harass tenants. This helps stop landlords from pushing people out just to make money. Please make this program permanent and expand it expand it to more people. I urge the council to pass these bills and strengthen protection against tenant harassment so that fewer people, especially immigrants, are forced into the shelter system in the first place. I also urge the council to please provide language access to the Amadou Lee Foundation so that there can be an outreach and these bills can be explained to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Come on.
Da ngay wax olof
Jërëjëf.
wala mu léeral?
Yeah.
Jërëjëf. Elijah? Okay. Good afternoon, council members. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to us. My name is El Hajindo. I want to speak about what it means to work hard every day but still live with uncertainty about housing and income. I work in security, and like many immigrants I know, I'm constantly adjusting to unstable schedules and temporary assignments. Some weeks there's enough work and other weeks there's still very little. Even when you are employed, the income is not always stable enough to guarantee steady housing, especially in a city where rent changes quickly and costs keep rising. I also want to share something many people do not talk about: the challenge of not finding work, but understanding how to move forward in work. Many immigrants are ready to do more, but job system, training programs, and applications are often not explained in language they fully understand. This makes it difficult to move from survival jobs into stable careers. This is why I strongly support the idea of the workforce program proposed by the Amadou Lee Foundation that is language friendly. When job training, job fairs, and employment guidance are explained in language people actually understand, like French, like Wolof, like Pulaar, or others in our community, it changes everything. It means people are not just working randomly to survive, but actually learning how to build a stable path forward. I have personally benefited from the Amadou Lee Foundation. They helped me find job opportunities when I was struggling, and they also informed us about important updates that affects work and immigration status. For many of us, they are the bridge between systems that are hard to understand and real opportunities we can actually access. The certification of no harassment program also matters because housing instability are connected. When someone loses housing or is under pressure, it becomes even harder to maintain employment. And when income is unstable, it becomes even harder to protect housing. This is why we need both protections and opportunity together. But opportunity only works when people can understand it. A language access workforce program would help thousands of us move from temporary survival jobs into stable employment. C'est bon.
Thank you. Jërëjëf.
Tey nga wax olof mën nga wax olof ah waaw waxal olof jox ma ko après nga wax olof non jox ma thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Waaleykum salaam.
maa ngi nuyu kenn ku ne si turam ak santam di gërëm Amadou Ly di gërëm ñi toog nii ñëpp parce que yombul tamit aussi quoi xëy na tamit sama wax tamit day xaw a doy waar moo tax ma bëgg mu translate di ma ko mais am na benn message bu ma bëgg a jàllale parce que man Uber laay liggéey vélo laa yor benn jour dama am benn accident bu ma metti boo xamante ni nii daa am benn américain noir bu mu mbëkk daf ma mbëkk mais après ma daanu gaañu mais ba léegi ñëwul ne masawuma mais dafa ñëw naan ma dama lay wool waa AS pour tiital ma man tamit si nit ki ma doon du ma daw du ma ragal parce que nit soo nekkee si yoonu dëgg waroo ragal si kaw loolu mu ñëw ne AS la may wool pour ma tiit pour mun a jóg dem bàyyi ko en tant que doomu aadama bi bànni doomu aadama bi nga gaañ ko ubbi sa porte oto mu dal ci nga ñëw di ko menacer génneel ma barre de fer pour ma daw ma ne ko du ma daw police mujj na ñëw mais avant police di ñëw daf ma agressé xoj ma ba am na ay américains yu jàlloon di lire vidéo bi ba mujj a posté vidéo bi par TikTok loolu nag dafa ma metti trop parce que dama ñëw fii tooñu ma sàccu ma defuma dara mais damay liggéey di daan sama doole pour dundal sama famille comprendre nga mais si kaw loolu da nga war a am sécurité parce que tey yow li ngay def li ngay liggéey da ngay dimbali ay nit parce que nit ñi dañuy toog seen kër xiif nga yóbbu leen luñ lekk léegi yow si kaw loolu yow da nga war a am sécurité mais des fois da ngay jànkonteeg yoo xam ni nii c'est pas logique dañ lay teg ay toor yoo xam dañ lay teg ay injustice yoo xamante ni nii doomu aadama même bu dee ñun duñu ay citoyen dañu war a respecter dañu war a jox cër parce que dañoo ñëw si dëkk bi dëgg la dañoo tooñ bët frontières yi mais dañu jox àpp pour ñu gisante ak juge mais loolu warul tax ñi ñuy xokkatal warul tax ñi ñuy manque de respect loolu dafa ma metti parce que vidéo bee ngi TikTok ñu bëri xëy na war nañ ko mën a seetaan fii mais nit mënul xam ni man la te man su ma résisté woon dem naa police ba ñu ñëwee daa am benn blanc bu taxaw ne moom lii dara xewu fi te vidéo bi après par la suite am na ku vidéo imaginer ku gorgé nit jox ko.
xaaral ma wax leen li nga wax nii ma traduire la. So hi, my name is Mamadou Nya. My name is Mamadou Nya. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. I would like to highlight an incident that took place as an Uber driver. I was driving and then dañ la fël.
daf ma fël.
And someone ci oto la fële.
ci oto maanaam damay dawal di ñëw moom mu gaare ubbi portam.
So
mooy de réflexe man mënuma gis ba mu ubbi portam te fu mu ubbi portam baaxul.
As a as a Uber deliverer, I was riding and then a car hit me, and then the person that walked out of the car, instead of checking up on me, once they realized that I was an immigrant, they started making threats pretty much that are aimed, if you pretty much do anything, I will call ICE on you. And then what happened is when he tried to explain to the person that he was not at fault, that particular person actually proceeded to actually assault him. So that's what he's explaining. And then he also explained that when people were there, but many people sort of didn't understand what was sort of happening. And I think this sort of highlights just the constant discrimination or the constant threat of ICE that they face, whether it's inside of these housing situation or even outside. There is a video that he's showing me where he's actually being assaulted. And he said the video went viral, but that there are, this is a sample, but there are also many people going through this in housing situations where threats are made of ICE. It's a constant fear. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing the story. Yeah, it's exactly what we're trying to get at.
Yeah. nee na jërëjëf ci li nga waxee loolu ñoom exactement loolu lañ bëgg a xeex.
It's not legal to discriminate against.
Parce que légalul pour kenn mën a am discrimination ci yow du loo xam ne loi bi daf ko nangu ñoom tamit loolu jug pour ñu xeex ko pour loolu mu dakk comprendre nga.
ok
yeah donc loolu la.
métti na ma trop parce que doguma la mais policier bañ ñëwee.
waaw léegi may ñu ku ci nekk dafa am deux minutes.
sorry 1 minute
su jeexee.
policier bañ ñëwee
yow yaay respecté loolu.
ok thank you.
ok
thank you. thank you. thank you. jox ma téléphone bi.
léegi anglais bi xam naa dafay desa leer comme ça dama koy lire ci français après yow nga traduire ko ci anglais bi.
da nga koy lire ci français.
waaw
ok c'est bon.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs les conseillers. Je m'appelle Ibrahima Diallo. Ma première expérience avec le logement à New York n'a pas été de trouver un appartement, mais c'est le fait que je ne comprenais pas trop comment les prix variaient. Un jour, je me suis rendu voir une chambre. On m'avait parlé d'un prix. Une fois que je suis arrivé sur place, pendant que je me déplace pour aller sur place, on avait déjà augmenté le prix, voire même presque doublé le prix. Donc, Par la suite, une autre fois, les mêmes faits se sont déroulés avec d'autres courtiers, d'autres agents immobiliers. C'est par la suite que la fondation Amadouli m'a expliqué qu'il s'agissait d'une expérience courante pour les nouveaux venus dans ce pays. Ceux qui ne connaissaient pas bien le système de logement et les structures de prix. Ils m'ont fait comprendre à quoi ressemblaient les frais légitimes et ce que devaient susciter les inquiétudes. Cela a complètement changé ma façon d'interpréter les interactions en matière de logement. De ce point de vue, le programme de certification de non-harcèlement est important car il responsabilise les locataires dans les immeubles où ils ne comprennent pas pleinement leurs droits ou la pression s'accumule discrètement au fil du temps. Mais ce que j'ai surtout appris, c'est que le préjudice n'est souvent pas évident au premier abord. Il ne devient clair qu'après que les informations ont été expliquées, c'est qu'a essayé de faire la fondation Amadouli à travers laquelle on a compris plein de choses.
Thank you.
I think that one was Mercy, right? Mercy?
Yeah.
Mercy, right?
Mercy,
right.
yeah.
All right. I was
See that?
picking up. I was picking it up.
We're gonna get some French and Wolof going on here. You know what I'm saying? Good afternoon, council members. My name is Ibrahima Jallo. My first experience with housing in New York was not about finding an apartment. It was about understanding whether I was being charged fairly. I remember traveling to see a room where the price was already high. But once I arrived, additional fees were introduced that had not been clearly mentioned before. At the time, I did not question it because I thought it was standard. Later, I saw similar situations again, different listings, different brokers, but the same patterns of unclear costs and shifting conditions. The Amadouli Foundation later explained that this is a common experience for newcomers, especially those unfamiliar with housing systems and pricing structures. They help me understand what legitimate charges look like and what should raise concern. That changed how I interpret housing interaction entirely. From that perspective, the certification of no harassment program is important because it creates accountability in buildings where tenants may not fully understand their rights or where pressure builds quietly over time. But what I learned most is that harm is often not obvious at first. It becomes clear only after information is explained.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, c'est bon. Léegi mën ngeen toog yéen ñi ñu ci chambre boobu ñu demoon après ñun ñi ngi ñëw léegi ñu pare benn moo ñu dese. Thank you.
But I am so curious what Mr. Mahmoud had to say about the police.
Yes. Okay. So yeah. Okay. Police bi léegi lan nga doon wax ci police bi.
ok man ba ma ñëwee exactly ba ma bañ ne dañuy woo police ba police ñëwee daa amoon benn waaju doon romb léegi américain bi moom américain noir bi xaw ma lan la parce que suñ la gisee nga nekk noir at nga nekk nit koo xam ne da nga bëtt boode bi pour ñëw fii duñ la jox benn cër duñ la jox benn crédibilité léegi nag blanc bi taxawoon foofu dane policiers yi fii dara xew fi parce que dañ ne am na ay témoins mais témoin boobu su dul woon vidéo bi tey jii nii bu doon policiers yi gis ni vidéo bi kon kooku témoin boobu duñ ko mën a dëggal parce que pour man en tant que doomu aadama dañ la war a njëkk a jox cër waru ñoo xool yow nit ki nga doon wala po bi nga doon man loolu laa gëm boog parce que bànni doomu aadama bi moo ëpp solo lépp lu munti doon parce que dañu war a traité fii comme il faut mais pas que dëgg la dañoo ñëw si dëkk jàmbur xam nañ loolu mais niñ lay bëgg di traité te yow da nga ñëw pour daan sa doole gisuñ la ngay sàcc gisuñ la ngay def naka sul noonu mais dañ lay traité noo xamante ni du yoon.
léegi police bi lan la ci def.
policier bi ba mu ñëwee dafa laaj blanc bi ne ko fii dara xew fi te yow bu dee vidéo bi gis nga ko xam nga ni waaj daf ma gorgé kooku mënoon na ma rey. mënoon na ma rey
léegi ba léegi dara xew ci.
ah
ba léegi nu mu mujjee affaire bi.
après damaa dem police ne ma da ngay jël si report bi ma dem police tamit bind ne papier bi ne dara xew fi.
loolu la ci bind.
waaw.
Okay, so he's stating that during the interaction, during the fight, the guy actually ended up choking him. And when the police came, he asked a witness, and some of them uh, actually were still discriminating against him. And they told the police that nothing actually happened, took place. Had it not been for that video, which actually shows him being choked and him going through that, that nothing would have been happening. And he said until today, nothing has been done as well. And he also said, I asked him what did the police do? Did they capture the individual? He said no, as well. And yeah, so yeah, that's what's going on.
Thank you for sharing the rest of the story.
No, I mean, just let them know that these kind of stories are important for us to hear. We're constantly having conversations with people like the police commissioner, right? We question folks all the time, and we work with their offices to really bring really the larger voice, right? Not individual, not so much the individual, even though this is very impactful to hear, but really how this spreads across multiple occurrences and how that really does impact systematic change, right? And so here we're finding out like there's an issue here with the police, with his job, with follow up, with being able to communicate with the people that are on the scene right there and there. Like there's so many levels to this that we can really address these things, and I'm just really grateful for the trust and sharing it with us in this moment, but hopefully entrusting that we will then take that on to do the work that is required to shift how people are feeling in these moments. So just thank you, and we're going to be working really hard on really addressing some of these like terrible experiences that you're having.
Thank you. Nena, ñëw bi nga xam ne moom nga ñëw fii at wax bi nga xam ne moom nga wax ni ñoom dafa am ñi nga xam ne ñooy ñëw parce que mooy laa leen wax sànq soo toogee wax ki nga xam ne mooy police commissioner bi mooy ñoom ñoo jiite mbirum police ñoom dañuy am ci ñoom yoon comme ni ñu toogee fii wax ñoom dañuy ñëw ñii tamit dañ leen laaj lan ngeen def liggéey bi ngeen def nan ngeen koy defee est-ce que yéen a ngi koy teg ci yoon nee na mu dégg ñoom ñu dégg lii ngay wax nii même su fekkee ne loo xam ne yow individu yow rek la dal day nekk loo xam ne day baax parce que dina ko mën a globaliser ci ñeneen ñi nga xam ne tamit dañuy wax am même jàngooro bu mel noonu donc parce que su boobaa dina mën a waxat ki nga xam ne mooy police commissioner wala ñi nga xam ne ñoo jiite yëpp ne leen lii at lii mi ngi xew ci communauté bii kat te lii at lii war ngeen ci andi saafara donc looloo tax mu ne mu baax nee na aussi mi ngi lay remercier ci ñi nga ñëwee pour mën a ibbeeku pour wax ko li nga xam ne moom moo nekk ci yow parce que loolu daf leen di jàppale ñoom pour seen liggéey nee na mënoo comprendre loolu wax yi ñuy wax nii nan la leen di jàppale parce que lu ci bëri dañuy dégg rek mais c'est bon yéen ngeen ñëw waxal ko seen bopp.
Thank you jërëjëf defuma ko pour man mais pour communauté parce que dinañ ko def keneen ku dul man.
I didn't do it for me, but I do it for the community because I understand that I know they're going to do it to other people. So that's why I highlighted it.
Parce que man dinaa moytu ba dootuma dalati mais mën nañ ko def keneen koo xamante ni maanaam liñ ma def kooku mën naa faible ñu def ko loolu jël bakkanam te kooku mën na fekk njaboot bu bëri topp si ginnaawam te loolu day metti.
He said the reason why he's saying it is because if he does it to someone else and that person is a weak person and they choke him and he dies, then it's going to be that's why him trying to prevent those actions is why he's highlighting it.
Yeah, we should be clear. He shouldn't be choking anybody.
Thank you.
Nee na pour mu leer la kenn waraloo woon xoj.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I think our chair of immigration has to leave a little early.
Yes, I do. I'm actually going to be speaking to a commissioner, and we'll be bringing some of this up. But I just really want to take a moment to thank all of you for coming out. Thank you for organizing this and bringing them out. I know that this particular hearing is around tenant harassment, and we're seeing how this bleeds into everyday life for the folks that are here today. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. I will be reviewing a lot of this, and I have a meeting pending with you and the rest of you as well.
Right.
Yes. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Nee na mi ngi leen di remercier pour ñëw bi ngeen ñëw nee na vraiment kontaan na ci donc moom dafa war a dem ñeneen dañ fi des mais moom dafa war a dem mais nee na mi ngi leen di remercier vraiment ci ñëw bi ngeen ñëw dafa war a dem waxaat beneen commissioner sax ci wàllum lii nga xam ne moom la ñuy wax ni donc mën nañ ko tàcc ñu remercier ko pour mu ñëw.
Thank you so much. There's more panel, right?
There's 2 more, I think.
Yes.
Kumba.
So we'll call them up.
Yeah, so we're almost done.
Papa Mama Tieng and Ibrahima Kiende.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's it.
Yeah. And just to repeat out loud too, that it is, I know you're taking the time, everybody who is here is taking the time to be here, but you represent so many who cannot take the time. And we take that seriously, we take that to heart. So absolutely, I just want to again invite for the specifics. There's been shelters, conditions in shelters that have been mentioned. I want to know what shelters those are so we can route that to the proper channels. There have been instances of maybe it's police misconduct, maybe it's improper protocols followed. We want to know, and I want to know what those details are so we can help with the follow-up, okay? Because I don't just want it to be you come here, you testify, and then we never, connect again, but how do we also follow up?
Okay, thank you. nee na li mu bëgg léegi mooy ñi nga xam ne dañoo ñëw fii wax affaire saleté wala yenn problème bi ñu jël leen moom mu def ci li mu ci war a def nee na pas ñëw bëggul nit ki rek ñëw wax fii kenn nee na léegi li mu bëgg mooy ñi nga xam ne wax nañ léegi seen problème yooyu ñu saafara ko léegi nii donc xam naa ne peut-être su jeexee yéen ñi dinaa seeni contact ñi nga xam ne wax nañ dinaa ko yónnee wala ma jox leen yéen contact am sax yéen ngeen aussi mën ko mais lu gën mooy ñu def ko ensemble donc nee na parce que lu daf ci bëgg mu def ci saafara mu jeex loolu surtout yéen problème yi ngeen am all right léegi ma liiral la wala da ngay liir ok.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Kumbasal. I want to speak about vulnerability during homelessness. When I first arrived, I experienced night without stable shelter. The most difficult part was not only safety, but knowing where to go for help or where support existed. Protecting women from homelessness also means having programs like the certification of no harassment program, which can help create long-term stability in safe housing, where tenants are not subjected to pressure or intimidation. In our community, we have seen many women experience mistreating by landlords, but they do not always report it because they fear consequences, especially when they are undocumented or unsure of their rights. There are also situations where landlords enter apartment without proper notice. Sometimes claiming they are fixing something when nothing has been requested or reported. The certification of no harassment program could help prevent this kind of experience by holding landlords accountable and reducing abusive practice. Lastly, the Amadou Lee Foundation helped me understand emergency housing, pathway, and legal support options. They also assisted families during detention emergency, helping reconnecting information when people were separated. That showed me how important rapid response is when systems fail to communicate clearly. The certification of no harassment program matters because it helps prevent people from entering homelessness through housing instability. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Papa Mama Cheng. Ma bëgg a expliquer benn situation bu may dund suñ kër nga xam ne depuis ci mois de mai côté le 15 mai dafa lakkan suñ kër gi dafa lakk basement bi moo lakk ñun ci kaw lañ dëkk mais tàkk-tàkk bi jotul egsi ci kaw bu baax mais bu loolu amee gars yi dañuy ñëw couper courant bi couper ndox bi couper gaz bi couper lépp te boobu instant boobu noonu ñu ngi nekk di ci weeru Ramadan di woor amatul ndox amatul courant amatul dala borom kër gi ak doomam jën dem wuti ji hôtel ne ñun dinañ leen wutal hôtel ñoom ci noonu wutaluñu hôtel tey suba après ñu ne ñu léegi da ngeen ñuy wut kër après ñu fayal leen ko le temps ñuy régler affaire yi ñu wut kër woo ko nangu ñoo jël ñu bàyyi mu sedd ñu demaat waxaat loolu mu waxaat ñu même chose di ko woo bu ñu waxee wut leen après dinañ leen fay buñ ko wutee ba am ko buñ ko wooyee duñu nangoo jël noonu la ñuy def ba après ñu bàyyi noonu mu sedd bi muy soog a am man fi may liggéeyee dafa jegeñee ak suñ kër comme amuñu ndox bu tàng te boobu jamono nees bi la amuñu ndox bu tàng bu ñu utiliser man maa doon mujjee di dem suñ place di root di indi pour gars yi sangu di ko utiliser mu jéegi loolu même man mi boobu ba léegi dama feebar situation bi ni mu demee nii dama feebar boobu ba léegi chaque jour damay baagantu hôpital ndax situation boobu noonu daf ma jàpp mu jéegi mu yóbbuñu ci beneen këram boo xam ne nii soriwul lool benn basement boo xam ne ñi ngi koy liggéey te pareegul situation bu doy waar boo xam ne nii gars yi ñu ngi koy dund foofu situation bu doy waar boo xam ne gars yi ñu ngi koy dund foofu amul dara foofu la ñu jël yóbbuñu fa naan ñoo tey suba ba semaine bi passé la waxaat beneen copain ne ko wutal leen kër ñu wut kër gi ba copain bi d'accord ak borom kër gi pour ñu dem foofu mu layaat ba jénn ci ba léegi nii ñu ngi foofu.
kon fi ngeen dëkk amul heater.
amul dara depuis ci koor gi ci moment nees bi ba léegi ñu ngi foofu moom njabootam jën leen dem wuti hôtel man boobu ba léegi instant bi damay baax instant bi jël naa rendez-vous pour dindi sama ñaari bëñ ndax sedd bi jàpp mu ko jàpp pour dindi sama ñaari bëñ situation boobu doy na waar trop jàpp ne loolu baaxul sax ci image Amérique parce que loolu buñ ko nit lay feneen ñoom mën naa nekk du nekk général ci Amérique mais dina nekk loo xam ne nii mën na yàq deru Amérique loolu baaxul loolu situation boobu lañuy dund bëgg nañ am benn gaale boo xam ne nii par exemple ñun mën nañ fay ñu ngay buñ ñu wutee amee gaale parce que boobu ba léegi ñu ngi wut mais amuñu yombul boobu ba léegi ñu ngi wut mais yombul buñ amoon gaale tey ñun dañuy génn foofu noonu dem mais boobu ba léegi ñu ngi wut amuñu te situation bi ñuy dund nii baaxul parce que ñun ñëpp gënaluñu quoi. Merci beaucoup. Papa Mama Cheng.
Hi, my name is Papa Mama Chern. I live in Queens. I live in Queens with other friends of mine. In May of last year, there was a fire. We live in the basement. The fire was close to the basement, but it didn't really destroy the basement. The owner of the place actually took his kids and they left, and then they told us that we would be able to he will find other places for us. This was May. There's no heater, right? Through 2025, from May until now, there's no heater. There is no there's no electricity from May till now. There was difficulty with the water, but now the water is back, but still there's no heater, there's no hot water as well. He was forced to actually go to the place where he works, which is not far, so he would bring hot water so those people can actually take a shower. He said that because of the cold, his teeth, actually his two back teeth, one day it was so cold that until now he goes back and forth to the hospital just so he can get some medical attention because it affected him. The landlord constantly tells them look for an alternative place, and whenever they find an alternative place, the landlord doesn't follow through with his promise of actually having to pay for that place. He said they work, they're open to paying. It's been extremely difficult for them to actually find a place to live. That's what he wanted me to highlight as well. First of all, I'm just learning about this, but I think it just shows how, there's a lot of situations where even when I hear about it, it's like, wow, what, and I think it'll be awesome maybe if we can expand the language or outreach where we can actually remind people of some of the laws and how they can be protected, because he's not alone. There's a lot of these guys. Sometimes they live elsewhere. They'll come and they'll tell you stories, and it's just like, what, in America? So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that story.
Thank you.
waaw damay wax waaw. Salaamaaleykum. My name is Ibrahima Kend. waaw ñu ngi leen di nuyu di leen jaajëfal di nuyu mboolem fi teew di nuyu sëñ Amadou Ly mi waaw ñun moom li ñu fi indi mooy dañuy bëgg a leeru rek suñu diggante ak avocat yi ñuy jël ci immigration bi ndax avocat yi da ngay ñëw ñu laaj la $6,000 wala $5,000 léegi ñu lay mensualité weer wu nekk nga leen di jox 250 wala 300 ci li nga waxante ak ñoom nga dem ba jox leen plus de 4,000 nga xam li nga leen di desal du bari waaye du la wax dara lu leer ndax man mii sax fan yi Amadou mi jot naa ko fay woo ba wax ak moom fekk sama avocat du may xam ci moom dara ba fan yi dama ko laaj ne ko waaw yow yaa ngi ma laaj $6,000 presque jox naa la plus de 3,000 xaw ma 4,000 te yow sama rendez-vous waxoo ma ci dara léegi nag ci la toog ne ma may ma tuuti toog 2 jours après envoyé ma message ni ma le 15 février 2028 laa am rendez-vous te léegi bi ma waxee loolu man it ma jàpp loolu ci laa woo Amadou Ly mi sax ba jox ko sama kii ID number mu ni ma yow non kii bi mënunoo dugg ci système bi moo waat sama beneen frère waxtaan ceeg moom mu ni ma yow amagoo juge waaw ñaar yoon xaw a kii ci sama bopp daal lëndëm ci sama bopp ndax ku ni la le 15 février 2028 ci nga am rendez-vous waaw léegi aussi am ñu waxate ma tamit bu ñu duggee ci kii bi système bi numéro baa ngi nii ñu ne ma yow amagoo juge ñaar yooyu daal di xaw a kii ci sama bopp parce que l'année dernière sax woo na ma fii ni ma dama am rendez-vous ma ne ko non comme man maa ngi xam man Texas laa nekk fa laa jógee fa la sama kees nekk ma ne ko léegi comme man dama bëggoon léegi nga move ko après ci la ma laaj $700 léegi bi ma laaj $700 bon léegi ni ma léegi mu toogaat 2 jours ni ma léegi move nañ ko ba jëmmi jamono booba nag déggaatuma ko ci laa ko woon nag di ko laaj ba mujj ni ma 2028 bii laa am rendez-vous te léeg-léeg bu ñu duggee système bi dana am amagoo juge loolu daal laa bëggoon a leerlu ak suñu diggante ak avocat yi ndax xamul loolu daal dañuy arnaqué wala daal ñu bëgg suñu loolu daal ndax dañ fay dugal suñu xaalis ku la laaj 6,000 nga jox ko plus de 4,000 wala nga te daanaka doo dégganteeg moom du la jox benn information bu leer daal moo loolu daal moo leen di suñu bopp daal. ok bëggoon ci ku ñu ciy dimbali.
jërëjëf tur bi.
Ibrahima Kend.
Thank you so much. My name is Ibrahima Ken. I'm here today because I would like to highlight some difficulty that a lot of our community members face, and it revolves around legal assistance in regards to immigration. I understand that this is another verse, is probably not the right place, but I'll just translate just so we understand what he's just said. Many of these attorneys will ask these people $7,000, $8,000. And in the midst of that, when they respected, the issue that many of these people in our community face is that they cannot reach these lawyers. They would take a substantial amount of money, but when you try to reach them, you cannot reach them. A lot of these attorneys, he's given an example where he couldn't reach the attorney to understand when was his court date. So when he finally reached the attorney tried to sort of blow him off and tell him, hey, February 15, 2028. And then he reached out to me, and then I looked at his appointment, and I said, you don't have an appointment yet. All right. So he's saying that many in our community, and this is actually a very serious issue. I think Adam was trying to point this out at some point, where many of these attorneys, they accept money. However, they're hard to reach. Even when you're supposed to rehearse prior to attending an immigration hearing, you don't see them, right? So I think this is, I'm sure, again, we're highlighting this, might not be the right place, but this is an issue in the community and it's massive. It's like half of these people have that issue. And we know ones that are notoriously known for that. Yeah.
Thank you. On the case of the immigration attorney, it's not my area of
got you.
expertise,
you.
but I think there is a question there about what role we can have in the sort of making sure that they are behaving with integrity, right? They have licenses, they have boards to be attorneys in the city, and so there should be a complaint mechanism for that kind of case. And in the story of the basement without the services, this is exactly the kind of building that CONH would apply to. They would not be able to secure permits in order to do any work if there's a finding that they're behaving in this kind of way. So I just want to make sure to get information about how big is the building that he's talking about to make sure that what we're trying to capture in CONH gets his kind of case.
Got it. nee na li nga wax noonu attends nee na li nga wax pour affaire avocat bi dafa am kenn ku ko toogoon foofu ma Elsi moo dem kooku ci kooku lañ ko doon wax moom lañ ko waroon wax donc dinañ defaat lu mel nii pour légal kese. comprendre nga. mais nee na dégg na la mais ñoom kële tamit jël na report mais yow ci li mu wax jox na la pour nga bind adresse bi mais nee na tamit loolu noonu nga ko wax nii ñoom dinañ fexe ba kër gii nga ko wax ñoom duñu mën a bénéficier ci cité bi loolu tamit la bindal ko adresse bi léegi nii. yaa ngi comprendre donc am naa yaakaar moom dina ma contacter sax pour mais comme soo leen ko bindalee jox leen ko si ñoom site bi xam nga borom kër yi dañuy site bi par exemple dañu leen mën a fay donc léegi site bi du ko def dafay nan borom kër gi da koy bokkoo ci maanaam doo bokk parce que da nga amoon li nga xam ne mooy côté discrimination wala li nga sa àkkat yelleef ci nit ki defoo ko yaa ngi comprendre. Yeah, he said even the insurance paid them, and they're fixing the place, but until today they're not. I mean, this is something that we're gonna have to look deeper into. But now that I'm aware, but I also wanted to highlight. I think we're done, right? I think we're done. I wanna read the final testimony, which is I think me. Thank you again for taking the time to listen. My name is Amadou Lee, and I'm the founder of the My name is Amadou Lee, and I'm the founder of the Amadou Lee Foundation. What you heard today is only a small portion of what is happening in our community. There are many people here with us today who did not get the chance to speak. And beyond this room, there are thousands more. Driving taxis, making deliveries, working in home care, supporting hospitals, and keeping this city running every single day. They're contributing, they're working, but many feel invisible. Today is not the full story, it's an introduction to a community that is grateful to be here, but is still struggling to access systems that were meant to protect and support them. We had to turn away many people because there was not enough space or time. So that alone shows the scale of the need. That is why we are respectfully requesting a roundtable with the City Council so we can come together and fully discuss the issues raised here and the many that could not be shared today, because there is a disconnect. The city has invested in preventing homelessness and protecting vulnerable population, but many people are still falling through the cracks, still facing housing instability, still lacking clear information and still navigating fear. We also want to be clear about something. The greatest fear in many of our community is not just housing instability. It is what can happen when something goes wrong. When people are detained, when families are separated, when someone disappears in the system without answers. That is why we're asking for support in our urgent habeas response program. This program has helped secure the release of many individuals, not only Africans, but people from many communities who were unlawfully detained or at risk of being lost in the system. It has brought fathers back to their children, reunited families, and restored stability in moment of crisis. But right now, we are doing this work with limited resources. If people are expected to report harassment, unsafe housing conditions, or unfair treatment, they must also know that there is a system in place to protect them if that reporting leads to consequences. That is why our habeas program provides a safety net when everything else goes wrong. We are also asking for support for our workforce program. As you know, council member, many of these individuals are the Canal Street vendors, and many were impacted by the bill that was passed which many felt excluded. A lot of these guys actually attended the rally that we did. We believe that the workforce program, it can be in the Bronx, it can be citywide. Many of them will benefit from it, especially now that the city, including the mayor, is they're on the verge of cleaning up Canal Street. So I have been in contact with your office, but it would be awesome to have a moment of your time so we can actually have some concrete solution in regarding to their need in regards to workforce. But thank you so much for taking the time for being here and for listening to our community members and their needs.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for coming. You leave me inspired to work harder and do more and try to figure out more solutions. But I just want to also congratulate you because I know it is not easy to organize constituents, right? And folks who are in need and are on the front lines of the support that you're seeking, to provide them. It's very difficult to then also have them to get here and speak for themselves. So I congratulate you. I welcome more conversation. And I thank every single person who is here for your participation.
Thank you. All right. Cool na nee na li nga xam ne moom mi ngi leen di remercier pour ñëw bi ngeen ñëw aussi mu wax ne remercier fondation bi parce que lii yombul nit ñi nga ranger la leen ñu ñëw pour wax li nga xam ne mooy seen soxla donc nee na mi ngi leen di remercier beneen conversation bu ci des aussi dinañ ko def ensemble mooy conversation bu mu doon wax sànq ci wàllum canal ñan ci yéen ñooy liggéey canal na góor yëpp yëkkati seen loxo Oh, okay. Yeah. So all of these guys. Okay. All right. So yeah. So thank you again for listening to us. We truly appreciate it. And we look forward working with you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. Thank you.
This was for...
Yes, and if anybody had not submitted a slip but did speak, if you could just make sure that we have their name for the record. Yeah. We will now turn to remote testimony. Once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you and the Sergeant at Arms will give you the go-ahead to begin. Please wait for the Sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. Dr. Tabitha Julian.
You may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Tabitha Julian. I am a public health researcher and journalist focused on housing instability, housing insecurity, and housing policy as drivers of health. And I'm also a rent-stabilized tenant in New York City. I'm also a first-generation immigrant. My family came to this country and into a rent-stabilized apartment. My research examines patterns of landlord rent stabilization non-compliance, and I conducted a study from 2016 to 2021 analyzing these trends, including lease renewal failures, rent overcharges, and rent reductions in services across gentrifying and non-gentrifying neighborhoods. What I found is that landlord rent stabilization non-compliance is not random, but it is concentrated. It is significantly more common in rent-stabilized units located in gentrifying neighborhoods where there is an increased pressure to displace tenants. These patterns reflect what I describe as structural harassment, systemic practices that destabilize tenants and create ongoing threats of displacement even within a regulated system. This is especially concerning because immigrants make up a substantial share of rent-stabilized tenants in New York City, meaning these patterns disproportionately impact immigrant communities. So when we talk about harassment, we are not only talking about isolated incidents, we are talking about a broader system of landlord rent stabilization non-compliance that creates sustained instability, displacement pressure, and harm. These conditions are not only structural, they are also physical and psychological, producing chronic stress, fear, and a loss of safety that directly impacts tenants' health and well-being. And I want to be clear, this is not something that I just study. It is something that I am currently experiencing. For the past several years, my neighbors
Thank
and
you. Your
I,
time
an
expired.
organized tenant body, have...
You may conclude, but your time has expired, so you can quickly conclude.
For the past several years, my neighbors and I, an organized tenant body, have taken the appropriate steps to address ongoing harassment in our building. We partnered with a community-based legal organization called Communities Resist and filed a harassment case in housing court. The case has now been pending for approximately 3 to 4 years with no meaningful movement. It is not on the calendar and we haven't been called to testify, and there have been no updates. At the same time, the harassment has escalated. I have experienced tampering and theft of my personal mail containing highly sensitive information, interference with my personal property, and incidents that have made my living environment unsafe. I have also experienced, as a tenant organizer, my management company calling the police on our organizing efforts at least twice. In the context of this hearing, that is deeply concerning. For many immigrant tenants, any interaction with law enforcement carries fear of exposure or potential entanglement with immigration enforcement. The presence of police alone can silence organizing efforts and discourage tenants from asserting their rights. When landlords use law enforcement in response to organizing, it creates a chilling effect, particularly in immigrant communities already living with the fear of ICE and deportation. I reported all of these issues to my local precinct and was told to take them to landlord-tenant court. I also contacted the New York State Attorney General's office and was told that they could not intervene because the case is already in court. So despite going through every appropriate system, housing court, law enforcement, and the Attorney General, no system has taken responsibility and the harm continues. As a result, I am currently displaced from my home. And while the Certificate of No Harassment program is an important step, it is limited by design. It's a pilot program and only applies to certain buildings and is triggered only when landlords seek permits, not when tenants are actively experiencing harm. A system that activates only during redevelopment cannot address ongoing structural harassment or protect tenants in real time. I urge the council to recognize that landlord rent stabilization, noncompliance, and housing harassment, especially in immigrant communities, are public health crises that require urgent, real-time enforcement. Specifically, I suggest make tenant harassment reportable through 311, creating an immediate pathway for intervention. Also, to ensure rapid response enforcement by HPD similar to their emergency repair responses, expand CONH beyond a limited reactive pilot, and strengthen protections for tenant organizers and immigrant tenants, particularly against retaliation involving law enforcement. Because without enforcement, rent stabilization is not protection.
Thank you, Dr.
It is a
Julian.
promise that is not being upheld. As
Okay.
a researcher, I also
Dr.
want to emphasize that,
Dr. Julian,
that
I'm
there's a
sorry.
strong opportunity.
Dr. Julian, I'm sorry. Your time, you're about double time. But I encourage you to please submit your testimony so that we can take a closer look at the situation you're describing as a test case and invite you to let us know about more about your case on an individual basis. So we'll try to get your email so that we can open up a channel of communication with you. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for participating today. And the next person is Christopher Leon Johnson.
You may begin.
Yeah, hello. My name is Christopher Leon Johnson. I support your bill when it comes to the Certificate of No Harassment program. I want to make this clear that the New York City Council needs to introduce a bill to where that the NYPD will be barred from working with the marshals when it comes to evicting tenants. The thing that nobody said today is that I think Kaban will make it later on that the police and real estate works together, and that's a big problem. Let's make it clear that I know there's nothing to do with the topic at hand, but there's a lot of these buildings that are ran by cops, and they work hand in hand with the police to harass people that who they don't approve of, and especially when it comes to tenant organizing, it's like the worst. These landlords are friends with the police, and so when they call the cops will always take the side of the landlord, or some I call the slumlord, over the tenants. And I think going forward, the city council need to make it where that had to stop. And I hope that our mayor Madani, because he's acting like he care about tenants, make this stop. And I'll say this right now that it is not about having sham hearings like what happened in the mayor's office. It's about really making real action. And the executive director of the Office to Protect Tenants, Steve Weaver, needs to be on top of this. And like I said, there's a lot of tenant harassment that happens all over the city. But like I said, unless there's bills that could really mitigate tenant harassment, especially when it comes to cops working with these landlords and slumlords to harass people, even organizing it to the point of where working with the New York City marshals to evict people, nothing really going to change because, like I said, I think the last session that I think the last year that cops always make things worse when it comes to like tenant issues. And I'll say this right now that the reason there's a lot of tenant harassment because they want people who makes less than market rate
Thank you. Your
rent
time
out of the area.
expired.
All right, thank you so much. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Ryan Patrick Cole.
You may begin.
Felicia Gordon.
You may begin.
Thank you. If we have inadvertently missed anyone that has registered to testify today and has yet to be called, please use the Zoom raise hand function if you are testifying remotely, and you will be called in the order that your hand has been raised. If you are testifying in person, please come to the dais. Seeing none, I will now close the hearing. Thank you to the members of the administration and the members of the public who have joined us today. This hearing is adjourned.